This podcast contains detailed plot spoilers, adult language, and mature themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Kapla! And welcome to a podcast of rare antiquities. Today we boldly go where we've never gone before. Television and the all-new, all-streaming TV series Star Trek Discovery. I will be your captain for this brief voyage, Geoff.
And I am craving the blood of a live Kolar beast. This is Harry.
And I'm beaming down to play some Fizbin with these guys.
Hey, welcome to the show, guys. We are definitely deviating from our regularly scheduled programming to delve into Star Trek Discovery, the series premiere, because obviously we are all such big Star Trek fans. So this is sort of an exciting time, first time we've really ever got a chance to talk Trek. I thought we'd start the show off a little bit here. We don't want to take too much time, and I know we could probably do an entire episode on this, but let's maybe do part reminisce on Star Trek and what it means to you, and also, as is customary, just the lead up to Star Trek Discovery and the hype and how you've been feeling about it. Harry, why don't you do the honor of starting us off?
Well, thank you for the honor. But we did do a whole episode on Star Trek, if you recall. But that's okay. We can go through it a little bit again.
We did?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
This is episode 30, I believe. I'm not sure. Not 30, 20 or 25 or something around that. 22, 21. One of those ones.
One of those episodes 1 through 33 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Well, we've never specifically talked about a specific movie or episode of the series.
No, we didn't go into any episode by episode thing, but we did talk about all the series and Discovery, the lead up to it or the anticipation of it, but that's okay. Let's quickly touch on it again. It's a pleasure. Star Trek for me growing up was definitely a staple of my childhood, like it was for a lot of kids growing up for other people in the 60s and 70s. For me, the 80s, caught the original series on rerun all the time, mostly on Saturday mornings. Once the cartoons were done in the morning, hit lunchtime, and just before I would actually step outdoors and get some fresh air, and the cocoon would open and I would come out. But
just ooze out in a puddle of goo.
Yeah, but I would watch Shatner to prepare me for the adventure on the outside of my house.
Unfortunately, I think it failed, but
So, I watched that, and then TNG and all the rest of the shows. Just Enterprise is kind of the one I really haven't paid too much attention to. Might be blasphemy coming from a Trek fan, but still haven't gone through all of Enterprise, but love the show, love the movies. It's such a big, encompassing topic that throughout last time we can't narrow it down completely, but it's always been a message of hope and humanity's potential, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, Nathan, you're up.
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to Harry, grew up, would catch reruns of the original series. I wasn't as familiar with the animated series. I think I was vaguely aware of it, and maybe, I might have seen like 1 or 2 episodes. When TNG hit, I think that's when I got more obsessed with Trek and I want to know more about this world, started buying books. Each series came out, I might, have, maybe dropped off a little bit, in the middle of the series, but then, I'd pick it up towards the last few seasons. I've been pretty consistent with watching each series since the start of TNG, and was kind of like the start of my nerd and being obsessed with continuity shows. And also the movies. I'm a huge fan of the original series movies, would watch them endlessly.
Yeah, I know that Mom was a big fan of the original series, so I think we would have been exposed to that growing up.
She brags about it.
Yeah,
brags about exposing us to it,
and rightly
to this
so.
day?
That is. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's and as she should, that her parenting highlight, in fact, the crowning achievement. And now that I say that, I think I regret it, because I actually just told her that we did this podcast about an hour ago, that we've been doing this for 2 years. So she's going to hear this episode and might not be too happy that I just said that. But that's a compliment to her and to everybody. So
wait, how clean do we have to keep this then? Because now
it's that ship has sailed.
I'm on the show. I'm on the show. You'll have to edit me out completely.
She's fine. She said she's fine with you doing it, Harry, because she's not that connected with whatever you say. But she asked me why I hadn't told her, and but we've been doing this for a while, and because it's not PG-13. So be it. And Star Trek is great. It's unique in its optimism of the future. I know for me, and I think I did mention this before when we did talk about it, is I credit and blame Star Trek for some of my preparation into the world, because I wasn't ready for some of the things that do still exist in the world. Like when I went out into the world, like I actually believed that racism and sexism and antagonism and all those things I believe that those were a thing of the past already, well into my teenage years, because of Star Trek. I thought that those were we'd already taken care of that shit. And that's just a credit to how effective Star Trek has portrayed that future and how effective that's been. It's a great ideal. And yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen every single hour of Star Trek that's been produced. Not that familiar with the animated series. It's kind of an aside, but yeah, it's really exciting to be here now with Trek back on television. It's great.
Where it belongs.
It's a great time.
It belongs back here, especially after the abomination of JJ's Trek. But
100%.
Yeah.
Well, we can. Here's the thing.
That's a third podcast after talk about this, and then talk about Star Trek canon, and then we can talk about J.J. Abrams and Star Trek.
I think we'll have plenty to talk about when we get to episode 9, because JJ's back there. Well, I should have crossed the streams again, but there you go.
Oh boy.
Well, we'll get, and I'm sure it's going to come up for sure here. So I'm ready to dive in, guys. Is there anything else that either you want just to say off the top before we jump in? I've got a synopsis here, which is peppered with my clever Star Trek jokes. Anybody want to roll up before I start?
I do want to second what Harry said about, like, TV is where Star Trek belongs, and that's its true strength.
Yeah.
I would just say this, like, it's good to see it back on TV, and especially, after JJ's Trek, it's not that how insulting or how action-packed or off-target it has been with respect to intellectual, philosophical ideals. I'm just anticipating and excited that hopefully we will, we can talk about if this episodes that we're going to discuss today has any of that. But I'm hoping we get back to some more exploration of the human condition. And that's what I'm more excited about, too. Along with some, hopefully interesting science fiction tapestry to it, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. Star Trek Discovery, Part 1, A Vulcan Hello. In deep space, a new Klingon prophet is looking to make Kronos great again. He wants to unite the disparate 24 houses of the Klingon Empire against a new threat, the United Federation of Planets. Sure, those humans say they come in peace, but what they really want is to steal individuality away from the galaxy and homogenize all of the species under the Federation banner. In Federation space, Captain Philippa Georgiou and Commander Michael Burnham of the Federation starship Shenzhou are on a routine mission to help some aliens in a desert survive some drought. A pretty standard B storyline on an episode of The Next Generation. After serving together for 7 years, Captain Georgiou is doing her best to Captain Picard Commander Burnham's Rikering about finally taking her own command. That conversation doesn't have far to go, however, as the two end up stranded on the planet due to interference from a coming storm. Captain Georgiou has the situation under control. She must have been a boss at the Etch-a-Sketch when she was a kid, as they trace out a nice big Delta shield in the sand to signal the ship. Back on board the Shenzhou, the crew wittily banters their way through some technobabble, and science officer Lieutenant Saru says some tech about some tech, and a Federation beacon has been damaged. Maybe we should go check that out. Since sensors are not operating due to the radiation of the nearby binary star system, Commander Burnham to a sweet Stark Industries meets Star Trek First Contact spacesuit to go grab a closer look. What she finds out in space is some kind of ancient alien structure etched with all kinds of weird symbols. And hey, look at that. A huge Klingon warrior with a big sword and dressed in thick space armor. He's not out here to win a battle tournament, and it doesn't look like he's going to invite Commander Burnham over for a glass of prune juice either. He makes an aggressive move, but thanks to her quick thinking, she impales the poor bastard on his own sword and jets back to the Shenzhou. Cue the flashbacks. Remember that weird Vulcan school from Star Trek 09, where all the Vulcan kids are studying holograms and those half-spheres on the floor? Well, that's where young Michael Burnham is, figuring out pi to the 89th digit and defining Kieran Kinthaw's first law of metaphysics. But how does she feel? Not good, it seems. You see, she is the lone survivor of a Klingon raid that took the lives of both of her parents. So she has been raised by the Vulcan, Sarek. Yep, that's Sarek. To follow the teachings of Vulcan logic. Burnham awakens in her back chamber and rather emotionally races to the bridge to warn the crew that there be Klingons here, and maybe she kind of sort of cooked a fool in the process. Totally in self-defense, though, totally. Then, a huge Klingon warship decloaks in space with the Klingon leader, Takuvma, aboard. They aren't accepting any voicemails at the moment, though, so it's time to contact Starfleet Command for guidance. Beaming in on Emperor Palpatine hologram is Admiral Brett Anderson. Yeah, he looks like a Brett. Burnham is not too optimistic about a peaceful solution here. That Klingon warrior was not out for a friendly game of Parisi squares. Now, let's not make assumptions about race, says the Admiral, and signs off. Thanks, Brett. Commander Burnham cautions, though, it's unwise to confuse race and culture. She skips back to her own quarters to call up her Vulcan daddy. He relates a little anecdote about Vulcan first contact with the Klingons. When the Vulcans first encountered them, things didn't go so well, so they learned from that experience and flipped the script on subsequent encounters. The Vulcans would forevermore shoot first. In the captain's ready room, Burnham is arguing for giving the Klingons a little Vulcan hello, but Captain Georgiou isn't willing to be the aggressor. Starfleet doesn't shoot first. Okay, you win, Captain, says Michael Burnham. I'm just going to rest my hand on your shoulder here to steady myself. And oh shit, she just Vulcan nerf pinched her captain. Seriously, she went down like a punk rocker on a city bus. Burnham rushes out to the bridge and orders an attack on the Klingon ship. Everyone's a little too confused, and Lieutenant Server is so quick to act on these crazy orders. Burnham gives the order, fire, but not before the captain, looking a little worn out but still brandishing a phaser, relays the order and asks just what the hell Burnham thinks she's doing. They don't have time to debate much as 24 Klingon ships warp into the sector, each of them staring down the Shenzhou. To be continued in Part 2. Part 2, a battle at the binary stars. Aboard the Klingon ship, Takuvma and his flunky, the albino Klingon Volk, try to convince the leaders of the other Klingon houses that it's time to unite against these white-bread Federation types. Before you know it, we'll all be drinking root beer. Just you watch. The Starfleet reinforcements arrive. You like that one? I like that one.
Well done.
As Starfleet reinforcements arrive, Captain Georgiou sends Burnham to the brig, then holograms over to the Klingon ship. Listen, says the captain, you guys are kind of on our lawn right now, and either you step off, or we can jam for a bit, figure this whole thing out. Also, sorry we killed that guy that time. After all, we come in peace. And that was just the signal the Klingons were waiting for, and they opened fire on the Shenzhou and the rest of the Federation fleet. The Shenzhou takes heavy damage across all decks, stranding Burnham in the brig and sending some poor crew members out to the vacuum of space. And they didn't even have time to hand out any red shirts. As the Shenzhou faces destruction, they're rescued at the last second by the USS Europa and Admiral Brett Anderson. Now it's his turn to hologram over to the Klingon ship to put an end to all of this. With all of his Zap Brannigan looks and charm, he proposes a ceasefire. Yeah, sure, says Takuvma. No problem. We totally won't fire any more lasers. And they don't. Instead, Takuvma orders one of his cloaked ships to cut the USS Europa in half by ramming it. The ensuing explosion has bought the Shenzhou some time. In the brig, Commander Burnham drops a Jim Kirk logic bomb on the computer and talks it into letting her go. Sure, the force field was about to fail anyway, blowing her out into the cold vacuum of space, but it's still nice to know a computer can be talked to death. Burnham makes her way to the bridge, and it's time to hatch a plan to get the hell out of here alive. Captain Georgiou's plan is to fly a photon torpedo into the Klingon flagship, but Burnham argues that it will simply make Takuma a martyr for all time, a symbol that the Empire can unite around and fight to the death for. Instead, if we can capture him, it will mean great dishonor and give the Federation leverage in negotiations. All right, good plan. The Shenzhou disables the Klingon ship by beaming a warhead onto a deceased Klingon warrior that was being retrieved. After the explosion, the captain and first officer beam over to the ship, and it's not long before they are engaged in mortal combat with Takuvma and Vok. Burnham manages to disable Vok and grabs her baser to help her captain, but it's too late. She watches as Takuvma plunges his blade into Captain Georgiou's heart. If she were human, I believe her response would be, go to hell. Oh wait, she is human, and her response is totally go to hell. She switches her phaser to kill and lights that Klingon up like a J.J. Abrams lens flare. I guess that makes Takuvma a martyr for all time, a symbol that the Empire can unite around and fight to the death for. Lieutenant Saru reads no life signs from the captain and beams Commander Burnham to the ship before she can retrieve the body. The Klingons and Federation fleet each withdraw, but certainly the fight has only begun. Commander Burnham stands before her court-martial and pleads guilty to all of the charges. Seriously, they pressed all of the charges against her. She probably even has to pay for the broken computer she logic bombed. She's stripped of her rank and position and sentenced to life in prison. Okay, thanks for watching. The end.
Bravo, sir.
Yes, very good.
I'm kind of glad that you were able to drop the make Kronos great again, because I was worried I wouldn't be able to make that joke in here in a natural way. So
That's proud moment for me, gentlemen. Very much for appreciating. So yeah. So that's the synopsis there. I mean, obviously, I poked a little fun at some of the events and situations there, but let's kind of dive right into it. It's actually hard to figure out where to start. But Nathan, why don't you give us your initial thoughts on story kind of breaks down there, and if this is a compelling concept for you to want to watch?
Yeah, well, I'm kind of of two minds about it a little bit, because I think as a science fiction premise, this really works for me. But it's kind of as a Star Trek premise, it has a few flaws. Naming the first one is that right from the word go, well, not, I'm exaggerating, of course, but we're going to start with a mutiny in order to attack another race. And I get it. Like, there's some of they're kind of maybe banking a little bit on, okay, these are the Klingons. They're traditionally like bad guys, especially in this era of Trek. I mean, but overall, I mean, I felt compelled. I mean, I try and drop a little bit of the Star Trek fandom just a little bit in order to kind of get, involved with some of the characters. And I felt many of the characters and their motivations, even though we only really know a few, kind of worked for me. We had some interesting premises. I mean, despite maybe some clunky dialogue to begin with. I guess maybe my only other kind of gripe is that we also know that this is not like traditional Trek, where we're going to have 20 plus episodes. We're going to have, 8 or 9 episodes?
15.
Was it 15? I thought it was less than that. Okay, well, okay. You know what? Forget that. I was going to say that. I was like, well, okay, why are we spending 2 episodes premise? It kind of feels like the start of the episode almost should have been at like the second half of the second episode, in order to, and then maybe we could kind of go back to some of the events that lead to what Burnham's character was doing, because I find her as a very compelling character, very interesting character. But unlike what we would normally have in Trek, there's not enough examination of what her motivation is. I kind of get it. Like, there's some shorthand there, because I understand Trek a little bit. It's like, okay, like she's kind of walking, these two worlds, being human and kind of also being raised Vulcan. It's sort of a reverse of a little bit of like Spock in some ways. But I just didn't feel like there was enough exploration of that. Other than that, I mean, just kind of watching it, like my initial impression was like, well, this is actually probably one of the stronger Star Trek pilots I've seen, despite some of the other problems.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I think the structure is it's designed to be a 13 episode season with this 2 episode prequel movie premiere. I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. But
yeah, well, that's actually an interesting way to put it, as kind of a prequel, because they also do away with the other thing that we often see in Star Trek, is that we introduce all the characters, like the main cast that we're normally going to expect to see for the rest of the series, because there were times when there was the guy who visited her when she was the brig. It's like, oh, okay, this guy's important. Oh, wait, no, he's dead. Okay, well, okay, forget that then. And that was kind of an interesting way to sort of introduce some of these characters, because other than Burnham's character, Michelle Yeoh, who, I mean, I watched the Hong Kong movie, and I really like her in some of those things. And Doug Jones, I mean, they had kind of a nice interaction. There was a lot of nice chemistry there, but we don't see a lot of the other characters. They're on the bridge, they're around, and you don't know who's important, who's not, which is a bit of a little bit divergent for Trek. But I like that actually a lot, because it's not following that same formula. So it's changing it up a little bit. But yeah, again, like there's something that's very not Star Trek about this. And I think I just kind of point to, again, like, this idea of we're going to mutiny, we're going to attack. Unfortunately, because we see the other side with the Klingons, we kind of see that, well, they're going to attack. So like, well, no, maybe nobody's going to really notice. So it's going to be kind of okay in our minds. But from that perspective, I think that we miss the examination of why we're going to do this thing, which would be a little bit more Star Trek.
Yeah. Harry, what, just your sort of initial thoughts on the synopsis, and just kind of going as it's compelling and all of our usual opening comments.
Initial thoughts, synopsis. This sounds like a very action-packed couple episodes. And that's the first thing that is really striking about not just the way it played out, but through your synopsis. It sounds very feature film-like. And also I'm picking up a lot of strong allegories or commentary on the nature of war, politics, kind of racial, antagonistic feelings here. These are just kind of like the first words that kind of pop into my head when I hear that synopsis, and then thinking back onto what I saw. And then in addition, just the feeling that, and we'll talk about this, is this is a prequel. So a lot of things change, and then we're going to be actually leading into the show. So this is all very, very unique and a first for Star Trek in terms of a lead off into a television series. It's very fresh, really unique, and I'm interested. And we'll talk about how those feelings will progress and strengths and weaknesses as we continue.
Right. Let's start the in-depth conversation here. Maybe a couple of high-level things, because I kind of want to get a couple things, I don't want to say out of the way like it's a chore, but I did want to talk about the title card sequence, because that's a big part of all of the now 6 Star Trek series that have come out. The music, and the imagery that we see during the Star Trek title sequence. So, Harry, I don't think it's been talked about enough, to be honest with you. Harry, what did you think of the theme music and just the title card sequence?
Yeah, I had heard a preview of the music prior to watching this episode, and you definitely get the few notes of the original series theme, Star Trek theme, which I thought was very appropriate. It was nice. And then the rest of the theme kind of played out on its own. Title card and the music felt very modern. I liked how you got to see different pieces of, weaponry or, technology, like the communicator, kind of being pulled apart through the animation during the title card sequence. It was short and sweet. I liked it, and I liked that it was fresh and different than everything we've seen before. Like, if for anyone, I don't know if I want to bring the Orville into this conversation. If you guys, any of you have watched that yet.
May as well. Yeah, I've watched it.
Yeah, so their title card sequence is very reminiscent of a mix of TNG and Voyager, where they go out of their way to make it feel like one of those shows. Here, it's completely different, and I like that. I think it needed to be something different. But I liked it. I think it was very good. Probably not my favorite.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved the original series. TNG's, I love the music, but the title card sequence on its own is kind of meh. I think my favorite, with the exception of the original series, is DS9. I really like DS9 quite a bit, especially when they up-tempoed the music after the first few seasons.
Right.
And they showed the Defiant, and I thought it was really, really good. Enterprise, I think, is the worst of the bunch, but
oh my god.
With the Rod Stewart song there, but I like what they were going for to show how history has led up to Enterprise. I thought that was clever, but it didn't work.
Yeah.
This was unique, and it was very good. Happy.
Yeah. I mostly agree. I mean, I really enjoyed the imagery. Again, it is unique. It's a fresh take on it. The theme music, I really love that they brought some of the notes from the Alexander Courage theme into it, because we haven't heard those notes in a theme since TNG. It doesn't yet have that iconic hummability to it. We'll see if it, it's only been one episode basically, so we'll see if it grows on us a little more. But yeah, I think it's a really neat design, really neat concept. I think it looks great. Yeah, as far as themes, I mean, the themes, I think my favorite title card sequence is Voyager's. I really like that sequence, and I even like the music from Voyager, but really strong all the way through, except Enterprise. And the imagery is cool in Enterprise. Man, did that song suck. That was terrible. So thankfully, oh my god, it was so bad. And then, it was even worse when they up-tempoed that, and it was worse. Holy shit. But thankfully, they did not make the same mistake here again with this title card. So Nathan, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, breaking news.
Well, first of all, I just want to say
Rod Stewart was just hired to provide a song for episode 3.
Okay. Slam dunk. Well, you know what? In defense of Enterprise, I agree that Enterprise's title sequence is terrible, but I really like the Mirror Universe title sequence where they changed up. It's pretty badass, actually. Yeah, for Discovery, I don't know. I mean, I'm not too hot on the actual music itself. I think it's fine, but it feels more like kind of like background music. But I will say that the actual visual sequence of it is really amazing, and I'm glad that they changed it up. And you guys touched on it, like it's very fresh, like it's something different, because they could have totally gone the way of every other Trek series and just shots in space and we're flying around and we're doing stuff and we're having fun. But it was kind of nice to see like these weird almost like schematic diagrams and it almost, and with a combination of, you're looking at X-rays in a way a little bit, stylized, and I thought it was a really smart way to do it. One thing I really appreciated, at the end of the sequence, you get a bit of a traditional flyby in front of like the camera. That was really smart, I thought. I was like, oh yeah, it's a great shout out to the other series that do that. But the music, I'm not entirely sold on it yet, because it's not something I would immediately recognize the way I recognize original series, TNG, well, all of them, other than the terrible Enterprise sequence. But I mean, maybe it'll grow on me. These are many common complaints, I think, when DS9 rolled it out. Before, I can't remember what season it was when they actually...
it was season 4 when Worf joined.
Yeah.
That's when it changed.
Okay, yeah. And I think that was actually a great improvement, but I still actually do like the song, like in the earlier seasons. But many people complained about it, so I don't know. Maybe it'll grow on us.
You know what they should have done in Enterprise when they did the Mirror Universe episodes is they instead of like the soft rock garbage, they should have had just like hard metal, like Kiss or
it's like White Zombie,
like that. White Zombie. Yeah. Just banging in it out, like just shredding a guitar over that whole thing.
No,
that would
I
have been
think
awesome.
the appropriate thing would have been Beastie Boys.
Oh, that was,
yeah. You listening, JJ? You listening?
Sabotage? Sabotage? Anyway.
Sabotage.
So that's just one thing I wanted to kind of get out of the way, because I want to make sure we didn't forget it. So let's get into the show here, guys. We open on a scene with T'Kuvma, the Klingon Donald Trump, speaking to his disciples there. So the first thing we see is this new Klingon design. Let's talk about the Klingons a little bit. So I just wanted to talk about the makeup design, costume design, the sets, and just everything Klingon for a second here. I guess I'll go first this time. So first thing I noticed as we kind of, the first shot sort of pulls out, it's sort of a space scene there with the planets we pull out, and it's T'Kuvma's eye. And if he was, I don't know if he was just sweating like Shaq in the fourth quarter here or what. He was shiny and dripping. It was just strange. It struck me. So the makeup,
but he's believing.
Design was just really off. He's believing?
It's like one of those, believing. Like, how
believing.
He's so obsessed and he's such a believer. Like, wasn't that shot through his eye kind of his inner workings, that he believes so much in Sto-vo-kor and the Klingon belief that it's almost like a commentary on religion unto itself, where you see all these churchies, they believe and they shake and they cry and they sweat. If you've seen those documentaries, and this is like one of those things.
Yeah, that was what I thought it was too. Like he was like in like a weird sweat lodge, and he was like gonna start. Well, he was gonna speak in tongues, but then he was gonna like pull out a snake and shake it or something like that.
Yeah, or a targ or something. Yeah. But you know what?
That would have been amazing.
This is not Klingon blood.
Yo. That's a really interesting take. I did not have that. I didn't see that, but now that you pointed that out, that makes me like that scene even more. I found the Klingons. I don't want to start off on a negative note too much, but I found that their manner of speaking. I want everybody to look like Worf at this point. That's because that's the Klingon that I grew up with, and I understand that we're kind of past that time. But I found them to be like when they spoke. It wasn't. Klingon's not a smooth language, but it wasn't smooth enough, and it felt almost over designed. Everything was pointy and sharp, and it was great. Obviously, a lot of work went into it. It was very artistic, and a lot of effort went into it. But I thought it was almost a little too much. And the Klingons are a very familiar aspect of all of Star Trek, right, from day one to now, and this seemed to me the least familiar piece of it. Like these guys these were, a race of whatever, not Klingons, and I wouldn't have thought, oh, these guys kind of look like Klingons. Like they didn't feel Klingon to me. So what did you guys think? Nathan, what did you think about that?
Well, starting with just the overall makeup and just the design, this new design for Klingons, I don't know. I've kind of really back and forth with, okay, like I hate it. I just, why can't they just make them look like Worf? Because we kind of, I get that they kind of retconned a little bit with Klingons. So it's like, well, why not just keep that? So I'm like, well, okay, fine. It's not that they look terrible necessarily, but like, all right, we're going to go with it. But I agree with you that the way that they spoke was so labored that, I was losing my mind watching it. And I don't really understand that, because when there's many great episodes in DS9 where you have people speaking in Klingon, and it feels very natural. And even when they don't even have subtitles in some of those shows, it's a more natural way of saying it. But it was so unnatural for these actors to be speaking in this tongue. I did kind of like the weird costumes that they wore. I could sort of believe that, okay, this is like, maybe what Klingons wore a few hundred years ago. Felt more kind of regal. Maybe this is their Victorian era a little bit. I did not like the design of wherever the hell they were standing on. It was like, what? Where is this? Is this the bridge or something like that? Because it seemed like they're kind of people doing work on this stage of sorts. The only other kind of complaint I had, I'm not like someone who normally complains about subtitles necessarily, but I don't know. Maybe we could have switched it to English a little bit, because I like to see the actors and their eyes and stuff like that, especially under all the heavy makeup. Have some stuff in Klingon, and then I think that might just be my setup when I watch it, because I have such a big screen to watch on that I got to look at like the bottom part, and then I want to see their face and stuff. But it was kind of an interesting way to start the show with very extremist types of characters, and the way he ends the scene when they say they come in peace. I'm like, oh, okay, this is an interesting way to start off, because you kind of know who they're talking about. They're obviously talking about the Federation, and by extension, humans, and just this religious fervor that they have. I thought, okay, this is a pretty compelling way to start it, because kind of, as a Star Trek fan, I kind of understand that, okay, this is like a real time of antagonism between Federation and Klingon. So,
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. So, Harry, what's your take on the Klingons?
Well, there's a lot to digest here, because first things first is we start off with the Klingons in what is essentially the pilot. So when have we started off? Like, obviously in motion picture, we started off with the Klingons, right? And V'ger. But in a Star Trek show, all of them started off with your heroes, right? And your ship. And your captain. Here we start off with what is essentially going to be the antagonistic presence of the show, like the villains. And they're starting off not even speaking English. So that's different. It's fresh. And I liked it. And the fact that they're speaking completely in Klingon, except for a couple of phrases when they actually address the humans, or themselves, and they say the phrase, "we come in peace," they're not dumbing it down for the general audience. And I love that. You know how, Nathan, you said how we're used to in previous Trek shows and movies, Klingons will say a few phrases in Klingon, and then it's shown to be authentic, but then they switch to English. The actors switch to English for the rest of the conversation, just for the masses who are watching. That's good, because, we can relate a little bit more, and the actors can, portray emotion a little bit easier. But I liked it here in the sense that they went full out. It was Klingon all the way through. And they even though I agree with you, Geoff, I didn't like the way they were speaking it. It didn't feel as natural, and that might have been just a bit of an inexperience with the actors, or a purposeful direction with from the director, because they want to make it now sound different, which is strange, because Klingon is now a actual language that they have made in reality. So to supplement Star Trek, but I enjoyed it because they weren't dumbing it down for me, and I had to read subtitles, and I liked that. That was great. But then the other thing to talk about, I preferred if they looked the same way as they did in the previous shows, and if the uniforms were a bit more familiar. I didn't mind the uniforms. I got used to it. I agree with you, Nathan. I didn't like the stage where they were in, because it's supposed to be in a ship, but I thought they were on a planet or in a room somewhere. It turned out to be a ship, and it's like, I would have liked to have seen a bridge or something. What struck me the most out of this opening scene was it felt like a terrorist group convincing other disciples to join them. That's what it felt like to me. Like this Takuvma guy was, Baghdadi addressing his disciples, convincing them we are now going to lead an attack. Like, not directly, and it's not a direct comparison, but that's what it felt like. This felt like a recruitment video, and I'm wondering if that was done on purpose. And to me, it feels like it was. I don't know what you guys think.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't had that perspective, but I mean, now that you say it that way, I mean, that's with a recruitment video. I mean, that's a very interesting idea, and I do like the authenticity of it. They're not dumbing it down for us. I mean, some of us don't have the white people problems that Nathan has, where my big screen's so large I can't look at the actor's eyes at the same time.
Guys, it's a real problem. I mean, I'm doing my best. Actually, Harry, I think you brought up like a couple of great. I didn't really think of so, but like actually, the first thing I thought was more of a clandestine sort of meeting. The way I think we'll maybe get into this, but this is sort of how I feel. KKK members are going to gather and talk about stuff, and like, okay, we're going to bring in some of these other groups and disparate groups that are sort of aligned, but they're not like necessarily with us. And as far as the way they talk, I'm more of the mind that it was more of a direction thing, because all the actors spoke like this. So I think that I can't remember, I don't know who directed these episodes, but I think it's like, okay, we're going to kind of do this to make it, and I don't know if it was like to make it feel more alien. I think it was just more jarring for those of us who have seen people speak in Klingon. By the way, hey, check out Duolingo.com, where you can learn many languages, including Klingon. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm paid by Duolingo. It is a real language now, I guess. But I mean, again, and Harry brought up a great point. This is very fresh. This is something we have not seen before, and it's kind of something that Trek needs. We can quibble about if it feels like Star Trek, but like this is the sort of injection that Trek needs.
Yeah, no, that's some good points. I'm sure we'll come back to the Klingons here. I kind of want to skip our introduction to Captain Georgiou and Burnham on Desert World here. We just have an exposition dump, but this is just sort of coming in at the start of a mission here. Actually,
can we talk about one thing about it?
Yeah,
the design of those aliens. Okay. I thought that was, because I'm doing a little bit of research. I'm not entirely certain, but I think it's a lot of practical effects for those weird crustacean-like aliens on that planet. I thought it was a great design. I mean, the rest of the scene I don't really think worked all that well. There's some pretty clunky dialogue, but I mean, what do you guys feel about like the design of those aliens? I thought it was really great.
I hardly even saw it. Like it was, except for when they approached the well. Then you get like
that's the part I thought really great, neat alien design, and I think it kind of hopefully it sets the tone for more than just latex glued to someone's forehead for a change.
Yeah, you know what? I agree with Harry there. It disappeared for me because it's
actually kind of a terrible scene because the dialogue.
I hated this.
Well, I think that was
terrible exposition.
Yeah, well, not only that, the exposition, this whole set piece was absolutely atrocious. The acting, the directing, the exposition, the dialogue. I mean, terrible.
Yeah, the whole scene was silly.
Terrible.
So and I believe this was the scene that they shot in Jordan.
Yeah,
they went all the way to Jordan and met one of the princes of Jordan, I believe, came out, who's a huge fan of Star Trek, came and was like, you guys went all the way out there for this? This is what you came up with? And this is, again, like, when it started with this, I'm like, oh boy, here we go.
Yeah,
you would never get in another Star Trek series.
That's true. I agree. I think that alien did look, the design looked really cool now that I think back. Was really cool design. It looked good. Like, it wasn't, I was thinking back, because I just did a run through both Voyager and Enterprise this year, watching Enterprise with the Xindi and the CG species that were there, and they were just terrible design and production value. They looked so cheap, and this was top-notch design. The one thing that they start here, and hell, we'll talk about it here because they did talk about it or reference it a couple times, is that we know that Commander Burnham has been serving aboard this ship for 7 years, and I'm positive they chose that number on purpose because that was the length of TNG, DS9, and Voyager. Was a 7-year time frame. So I got the impression, like, it's almost like this.
It's foreshadowing. That's nice.
The series of Star Trek Shenzhou.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. That's a great catch.
Yeah, and I really like that. Only instead of all good things or, what happy. Well, we'll get to the ending after, but I thought that was done on purpose there. So I thought that was kind of neat. I mean,
okay, but only now imagine that the end of TNG, with all good things, Riker takes over the Enterprise,
and the Enterprise explodes. Yeah, exactly. But so we'll talk about that later. But if you do think about it that way,
That's actually
much
pretty.
gut punch is it?
It is. It's a great gut punch. I love
That's actually. I had not thought of that. That's a pretty amazing. Next thing you want to talk about.
So we do finally. I mean, the shot where the Shenzhou comes through the atmosphere and you get a couple notes of the Star Trek theme. I thought that was that tugged at the heartstrings a little bit for me. I thought that was a very cool little moment there, a little emotional. But anyway, we do get back to the ship. We kind of get into the main story there. So we meet Lieutenant Saru, I believe it is pronounced, played by Doug Jones, who's our token alien. And this is where the conflict begins. So we need to go investigate this Federation beacon that's been binged. And so a standard Star Trek type mission. They get some witty banter on the bridge. How did you guys feel the banter played out in these couple scenes here? Harry, what was your thoughts?
I really liked it. I was surprised in the trailers. And actually, I have a bone to pick now that I remember this is one of the points I had in the back of my head is I think that marketing really did a disservice to the first 2 episodes of the show to really lure in some other people, because the way it was marketed is, even though they were showing the scenes that we were seeing, but they weren't really showing some of the details that I really wanted to see. And I was a bit worried. And then now I'm watching the show and I'm seeing some extra detail on the consoles and the captain's chair and some of the other stuff. And it looked great. It looked like a good bridge between Enterprise and what would become the original series, because, everyone's going to gripe about, it looks so modern that how can the original series come next? Or how can it be part of this timeline? But we have to also make it a modern show. It can't look like that. So I thought they did an okay job in bridging that gap. I think they could have done something a bit more with the uniforms to kind of bridge that gap, even though I like the way the uniforms look. But I thought the set design was good. I didn't like some of the camera angles that the director was using. It felt very JJ, very kinetic, very dynamic, very, he's trying to do too much with the camera. Overall, not bad. And I like some of the dialogue. I really enjoyed Saru. I thought in the original marketing material, he was going to be my most hated character. And I still hate that line, "Oh, I sense death is coming." That's what my species does. Terrible fucking line. Are you kidding me? And that's what they use to market the show. But I like the original back and forth here, how he's scared of everything. And I liked it. I liked his lines here. He appealed to me as a character. I think he's going to be interesting. And he'll be the humorous one. It kind of reminds me of C-3PO in a sense. I just hope they don't overdo it. So,
yeah.
But I enjoyed the first scenes here, and
that's interesting. Yeah, he totally is 3PO. Yeah,
yeah. But I enjoyed all the banter back and forth. There's a good kinship between Georgiou or what was it, Georgiou? Was it Captain Georgiou and Burnham?
Georgiou, yeah.
And it was not the greatest acting, but the people are still trying to find their rhythm. So I'm going to forgive it for the first few episodes of this series. I mean, people need to find their place and get used to things. So I thought for the most part things were good.
I'm really in agreement with Harry about just the general design and a lot of the dialogue and interaction on the bridge. I mean, I think it mostly kind of works. There's some clunky parts. I think having Doug Jones play an alien is really neat because he's such a weird, physically, he's such a strange, he's a very skinny man and very tall. I thought his makeup was quite good. And like Harry, I kind of thought I was going to hate him based on the trailer. But I was like, oh, okay, he's kind of endearing, kind of in a way where he's a bit of a C-3PO type of character. I did hate that line that he does later utter, I sense death. I'm like, well, why? I mean, they're outside the ship, come on.
Oh, yeah.
But I actually kind of feel like he may be a very compelling character, although I kind of hope they get into this thing where it's like, well, going into space is sort of a dangerous business, even when you're with Starfleet, and if you're that afraid of everything.
Don't they make
and I hope they kind of explore a little bit of that, because I think that could be kind of interesting. They do make fun of him a little bit.
No, but I think even one of the characters, whether it was Michael or someone else, said the exact same thing. Or no, it was the captain saying.
I think it was Captain, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they both do. I think they both call him out on it. It's like, what are you doing here then?
Yeah, what are you doing here then? It's like, was he there the whole 7 years? Like, you can get used to
that was actually my one quibble about some of the dialogues. They've been together this long, but yet there's still a little bit of exposition. They try and hide it a little bit behind some of the dialogue. And they've been after 7 years, we've all worked with a bunch of weirdos. After a little while, how often do you call them out after years of work? It's you just kind of put up with it and you just kind of deal with it, right?
I would have only have bought that line about the death is if he was sensing Luoxana Troy coming. Then
oh boy, and she just waltzes off the bridge. Amazing.
Self-destruct. Code zero.
He just puts himself in an airlock, and I just sensed my death. I'm out. My one quibble about the bridge design, it's one of the things I did not really care for with the J.J. Abrams. Like, this bridge is huge. Like, you could just take out all the consoles and you could fucking play soccer in there. I mean, it's just such a huge bridge. And it's like, I understand, like, in the past with the shows, like, you build them on a bit more of a standard set. I imagine there's a lot of green screen that's going on with Discovery. And it's like, well, we don't have to be so constrained. But there's so big and it feels unnatural with the bridge. It's like, that's a lot of wasted space. Like, that's 10 forward. That's 10 forward space you got going on there. That's not bridge space. And also, Harry, you brought up another good point where you have to sort of bridge a gap between this and TOS, but you're never going to do that. You're never going to do that and have people believe it, the technology available. Like, so you have to make it a modern show.
Yeah, you're in a lose-lose situation, actually. You're either going to appease the fans who want that authentic bridge and believable, it's going to look like TOS, and then you're going to lose the modern audience saying this looks like shit, right? It's not modern enough.
Absolutely.
So,
actually, as a Star Trek fan, I think they would even lose me if they made it look too much like the original Enterprise, because I can watch TOS and enjoy it, but I kind of understand the context of it. But I would not want a new show unless it's like some of the fan shows that they kind of film and they put up on YouTube and stuff like that, and they have really good production design. I can kind of watch and appreciate it. But for a brand new show with the kind of money that it has for production design, if they did a faithful recreation, I would lose my mind.
Let's keep moving here.
No, tell us your take.
As far as the design of the bridge, I saw some of the behind the scenes stuff on how they constructed that bridge, and my God, did they go through a lot of work to construct that bridge for a ship that gets destroyed in the first fucking episode. I mean, holy shit. I love the look of the bridge, and we may as well get it out of the way now. I mean, the show does take place in the so-called Prime timeline, not the Kelvin timeline, but again, and I'm actually happy to know both of you right now that we're all willing to get past the design. Like, it's not going to look like TOS. And like, that's just how it's going to be, right? So we can just kind of get through that. It would have been neat if they'd been able to somehow, from a design perspective, resolve the look of this show with the original series. But like Nathan said, like, that's just not going to fucking happen. I mean, it wouldn't look right. And I think that they were smart to just let that go. We can incorporate the sounds of the original series with the communicator and the doors opening and the pings on the bridge and things like that. And that's about what we can do. And that's great. What I found most interesting is the style of cinematography. This is aping J.J. Abrams' Star Trek 09 with the canted angles and the lens flare and the bright, the lights and the transparent screens and all of that. And I'm okay with that because I didn't have a problem with that in the Star Trek movies. It can be a bit much at times because it is very overt. On the plus side, it looks very cinematic, which I think is a huge asset here. And
I think
it does, I think, help.
They did it helps. They did it this way because they knew that the new Trek movie, like, Trekkies are coming no matter what to see this. At least give it a chance. At least for a few episodes. But they know the masses, if they check it out, it's probably, they want those masses who watch JJ's Trek, who are checking this out, to say, oh, it's just like that. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah.
So they want to hook them up for the streaming access, CBS All Access bullshit, and then they've got them where they want them. It's just like, you got them, Jim, where you want them. And it's, and there you go. And so hopefully, my hope is that as episodes will continue on and other directors are here, we'll get someone who's not trying to ape New Trek. Have a different look or a look on his own.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I can understand the perspective from CBS to go that direction to pull in some viewers. And in all honesty, the three guys sitting around doing a podcast about Star Trek here, we want Star Trek on TV to continue for a long, long time. And if it means that we have to get new viewers in, which it does, if this is how they have to do it, I'm okay with it because it still looks like $1 million. I'm fine with that. And it'd be nice if they can slowly transition into something that's a little less JJ-esque, still modern, but something that might be more familiar to TV Trek while still looking, high production values, right?
But,
so
but
I think that's good.
But not point and shoot either.
Right, that's right, exactly. So I think there is a medium there that can be found. I believe that exists. So hopefully we do see that as sort of the proper series does continue. But conflict starts with basically an incident, sort of a random encounter in space. Michael Burnham goes out to investigate a strange anomaly, destroyed Federation beacon and a strange anomaly in space, and we run into a Klingon structure in space and that Klingon warrior there. And I thought this guy looked pretty neat. I thought that was a cool scene with her out in space there. I mean, the effects are top notch. And I was actually really surprised at how great it did look for a TV series. One thing I was worried about was that CBS was going to do this on the cheap. And they did not. I mean, I don't know what the budget was for this. I couldn't find that information, but
I think today I had heard rumor that it's about $15 million per episode.
Wow. No way. 15 million.
Maybe I'm mistaken, or is that Game of Thrones? I read some kind of article. Yeah, I can't recall.
Wow. I mean, that's pretty great, actually, if they are going to commit to something like that. I might be wrong
on that. Maybe I'm confusing it with Game of Thrones. There was an article today about something. I'm like half asleep. As it is, I'm on my 10th day straight at work, so who knows what I think.
I mean, either way, it was expensive. Like, they spent money on this. And
it's on the screen. Like they did spend money. I don't know about that 15 million, but it's on the screen for sure.
Yeah. Thank you. It is on screen, but it looks great. I mean, it looks fantastic. So anyway, let's talk about the flashback. So when Michael gets she's bordering on radiation sickness, which is a tried and true Trek trope. Should we get our flashback to the Vulcan elementary school, I suppose, those weird spherical learning pods or whatever the fuck. And this is where we first learn that she is a survivor raised by Vulcans and sort of being brought up in the Vulcan logic system here. So me personally, I mean, I thought this was an interesting flashback. I did think it was very interesting that they used the J.J. Abrams design here. I mean, I guess technically speaking, this would be, talking about the timelines diverging, the Prime timeline and the Kelvin timeline, this would be a part of either timeline, so it's okay. But I did think it was interesting that they used this. So again, I think it's another ploy to kind of grab viewers who are interested in the movies. But I thought it was
could be a leftover set.
Yeah, well, and hey, we got to save money, and that's possible as well. I like this flashback because I think it helps circumvent some exposition because she's answering the questions there and they start asking her about what I took to be the incident that she was the survivor of. It's like, tell me about the incident of whatever Klingon raid on wherever, and she starts to get stumped. Like, how many survivors were there? And now obviously she's really caught. And I love that. I love that technique of using that question to show us who she was and why she's being raised as a Vulcan there. So I thought that was a neat little technique. And we get our first introduction to Discovery's version of good old Sarek, who's appeared in many a Star Trek series. Nathan, why don't you just give me your opinion on how that played out there and your opinion of Sarek?
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of did like that they used this particular set, I guess, from the Abrams Star Trek, which, I mean, I think actually kind of worked. Like, it seems kind of, weird and alien, very kind of Vulcan-esque in a way, or maybe now I just see it that way. And you're right that this was an interesting way to sort of introduce her backstory because, we've already, what minute are we at, when we kind of get to this scene? Because we've already had some clunky exposition. And so, we need to tell her backstory. And this is kind of a clever way of doing it. It's very obvious, a very obvious way, because it seems very strange that you'd be asking this is a test, I suppose. Like, it's a very specific historical event that seems like it wouldn't even be, it would be like a minor historical event. But anyway, seeing this small child, like she got the Vulcan haircut and she got the Vulcan robes. And now we're seeing our latest Sarek. And, I think it's a pretty good introduction. The one thing we did kind of skip over that I did like, before we got to the scene where she starts, even before the attack with the Klingon, like the whole idea of she's like, well, no, we should go investigate. And so, we kind of get that Star Trek we're out here, we're explorers, we're scientists, that's our mission. But it's not necessarily, for me, it wasn't necessarily a great scene, but I think it was a great introduction to the backstory, and it kind of felt like a natural way to introduce it without, more clunky exposition.
Yeah. Harry, what about you? What are your thoughts here?
The set is fine. I'm just asking the question as to why we need to make her raised by a Vulcan. Just a couple things. It just feels like, not desperation, but like you don't really need to have her have that side of logic, because we really want to explore the human condition. And it'll be interesting to see how it progresses, because the problem I see with this, unlike Spock, where we got a arc through the series and the movies and how he's dealing with logic, or other people in the other shows and their irrespective arcs, but she seems more balanced, like she's kind of absolved herself of the Vulcan way when we see her in the future, because you see her in another flashback when she first joins the crew, and the captain's showing her around, and she's very Vulcan. She's very, stiff and rigid, and as we would expect a Vulcan to be, unemotional. But then, in reality, where she is in this time, the 7 years she served there, she seems to have found that balance. So what arc are we really going to see? So is it really necessary? She seems to be very emotional. She doesn't have any emotion in check. And I get the reason what her point is, because when we see the Klingons, that's kind of, unravels her, because it brings back all her memories of her family. So I guess that's something that would unravel her emotionally and lose that, training and logic. Problem I see here is moving forward is what value is this going to serve the character? And we might get episodes like this. I'm just a little curious as to why we need to go down this route and why we even need to bring in Sarek again. Couldn't have been another Vulcan. Like, we have to really make her Spock's kind of unrelated sister, like foster sister or stepsister or whatever you want to call it. I don't like this. It just reeks of desperation to me.
I think the Sarek thing is desperation, for sure. Like, there's no, if you're going to kind of go down this route, why make it Sarek? I mean, it's such a, it could be any other Klingon, but it's like, well, okay, we're going to tie it into the original series. Although I will disagree a little bit, that I think that there are some elements of her character, and you're right that we kind of see some progression from her as a child, where she's just trying to be, she's trying hard to be more like a Vulcan. Then we do see her as very Vulcan-esque, but then as in the actual regular timeline of the show, she's more embraced some of her humanity. So I think I'm kind of hoping, it's kind of hard to tell now, with just 2 episodes. I'm kind of hoping that the way the character will progress is that she's in this weird place where she's still I believe in logic, and she even says it to Sarek, emotion informs my logic, and that was times Spock's deal. She kind of goes these weird extremes, because mutiny is not a level-headed thing to do.
No.
And so I'm kind of hoping, I think it could go real sideways on us, where it's it's totally pointless.
That's kind of my worry, because, where are they going to go if they go anywhere? I mean, we have to give it time, so we have to give it time.
I agree. I'm willing to buy into it now. We can kind of maybe learn a little more humanity, where she's kind of trying to battle these two forces in a way that it's a little bit different than the way we saw the evolution of the Spock character. But for all we know, they're going to throw it out the window in the next episode. And it's that was entirely pointless, and it's stupid.
I think what's interesting is that we have Spock, who's half human, half Vulcan, raised by Vulcans. We've had Worf, who was raised by humans. Odo, who was raised by Bajorans, who's a different race. So it's a theme that we've seen before, but we've never had a character who was human who was raised by an alien race. And I think I see what you guys are saying, where it has a little bit of desperation, where we got Sarek now, but I think it's a decent place to go, because we get to, we're familiar with Vulcans, and if we're going to have a situation where our protagonist is raised by a different species, we are trying to explore different aspects of diversity. So sometimes, usually when we have diversity on TV and even on Star Trek, it's okay, well, there's a Japanese guy on the bridge, and there's a blind guy who's also black, who's our chief engineer, and sometimes Star Trek sort of stops at that level of diversity where we have a person of color as one of our heroes, and that's that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. But and we'll get into this more later. But where Burnham says later, you can't confuse race with culture. What we're doing now is we are going beyond just race, and we're going with cultural diversity. So we're getting our human protagonist, who's the person obviously we're going to try to identify with, who is raised in a different culture. So we get a different type of diversity and a different angle into it. And yeah, we're using a known quantity, Sarah, who's a Vulcan, in order, like, as our doorway into that. But I think that's a kind of a good way to go, because we have to start with something familiar in order to bring the audience along. So yeah, we could have used any Vulcan, and we could have used any alien species, really. But we got to start somewhere. So I'm all right with it being like this. We have some connective tissue with the original series, with Star Trek as a whole. So I think it's fine in that respect. Anyway, that's my opinion on that. So we get into the Klingon conflict. So there's no contact from the Klingons. Michael wakes up in the chamber there. She's getting zipped up from her radiation burns, which I thought was kind of a neat scene there from a special effects standpoint. Bit of a Star Trek trope where, fuck you, Doctor, I'm going to go back to the bridge and damn the consequences, but that's okay. And we get Michael's argument to the captain about we get the admiral there who beams in, and this is where we get the race versus culture. So maybe this is where we should start about that. I mean, I thought that was a really, really interesting concept to introduce here. Harry, let's talk about race versus culture and this concept introduced in a Star Trek concept here. So what do you think?
Well, again, it's race and culture, right? It's just the fear of the unknown. Is this the scene? Now you have to refresh my memory. So this is the scene where the admiral comes to the captain and says, don't do anything. We'll send backup and don't fire. Or is this because they've encountered, at this point, she's killed the Klingon, correct?
Yes, this is after she's killed the Klingon and brought back, and then she comes. Yeah.
Okay.
So she gets out of sickbay there,
but then is she warning them it's the Klingons? Like I'm just for now, I just need to kind of find my balance, like where we are.
Yeah, she's warning them about the Klingons because they don't recognize anything. They haven't seen the Klingons in 100 years. There's this invisible ship that's out of nowhere, and she says like, oh, I was Klingon out there, and I basically stabbed his ass, and that's kind of where we're at. So they call the admiral to consult, because the communication signals are jammed. They can't communicate with Klingons. They're not answering hails, so they're consulting with the hologram in her ready room.
But this is they still realize it's the Klingons are out there.
They know it's the Klingons now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And what did the admiral say again? Not to do anything, right?
Yeah, he's like, let's.
And she's coming in and saying, we need to fire.
Well, she hasn't said we need to fire yet, but she's like, it's Klingons, they're aggressive. Like, we need, send reinforcements right now. Like, this is going to be trouble.
So,
I believe that's how it played out.
Right. So, the funny thing here is in reality, she's right. The way the show progressed, Klingons were trouble, and she was trying to save everybody. But what does that say about our tensions here on Earth in reality, where it's just like, oh, I see a different culture. Immediately I'm scared. We should all be scared. We need to be aggressive. We need to protect ourselves. We got to fire first. Us first versus them. That's just kind of, the starting point for where the show is going to go, and it's highlighting some of the themes that it's going to be talking about through the series, and how it'll progress through the season or through the series as a whole. That's kind of what we're going to find out. But right now, it looks like, it's par for the course as per how things are in our world. Yeah, through military encounters, through political encounters. We're afraid of the unknown right off the bat. And we should be aggressive. And the other side's thinking the same thing. So I found that interesting.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting was, we're used to the Star Trek concept of, we come in peace. We're not shooting first. We're all friends unless you have a reason to make me your enemy. And I don't know if they did this on purpose or not, but this admiral has a real douchey way about him, and he's the one who's preaching the peace aspect. Like, no, let's chill out, everything's fine. Like, don't judge them based on their race, like how they look, color of the skin, or the shape of the ridge of their forehead.
But technically, he's right. He's fulfilling.
No, he is.
He is. Creed,
Yeah,
he should be.
He is, and he should be. But what I thought was interesting about how they did that is the message is correct, but the way they portray his character is like, man, who's this dick? And I thought that was interesting, because she's like, right, the hairs on Michael's neck are standing up, like she knows that something's off right now, and even though she wants to believe that message, she like there's a nuance to the situation that she's picking up on that, like, yeah, we don't fire first, but like something's up here. So, and I think this is one of the interesting questions that, like, it's Star Trek. Star Trek asks good questions, and this is sort of the start of the nuanced question here that I think that is being brought up here is, yeah, we're not aggressive, we're not shooting first, but something's up. So what are we going to do? And that's when she goes, so after that, he's like, no, be cool. And she brings up that line. She's like, well, don't confuse culture and race. And he signs off and she goes back to her quarters to consult with Sarek. And this is where we get his anecdote about the Vulcans' first contact with the Klingons, where they fucked up the Vulcans. So, ever after the Vulcans, ultra-logical, peace-loving species, they fire first.
And that's weird.
And that is really weird, but this really worked for me, and the reason why it worked is because the Vulcans didn't fire first because they're pissed or because they're warlike or anything like that. Is because it was logical for them to preserve the peace, because they had to shoot first, because that's what the only Klingons will respond to.
Yeah.
So we were talking in their language. The Klingons respect that.
They respect
and I think
power,
that's right, power and strength. And I thought that was really interesting because it's such a non-traditional Star Trek idea. But when you present it from the point of view of the Vulcans, whereas like it is logical, I think it really hits. And because it's so unexpected, I think it hits doubly hard.
No, and I think you bring up a good point, Geoff. I think you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, I forgot about that point, and it's true. That's what Sarek said. Still, it's from a commentary from, I don't know if these first two episodes are trying to put a stake into where they are trying to present their themes and what they're trying to say. It's too early to tell, and we'd only have to really judge that as the show goes on. Right, so I think it's a good starting point. Yeah, it's some interesting concepts here, but it's a bit messy. But you're right. I mean, that's an interesting little nugget. That's exactly what the Vulcans are only thinking through logic, and they're saying, "Yep, we have to fire. That's the only way we will maintain peace."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Nathan, what are your thoughts here on that piece?
So, Geoff, did you not call the Admiral Zap Brannigan in your recap? Yeah, because that's exactly who it was.
Wasn't he anti? He was like inverse of Zap Brannigan. The swagger,
well, he was
like he was doing the right
thing. He was like, like his slightly less successful younger brother of Zap Brannigan.
That would have been awesome if he was just like wearing the top.
just full on Zap. That would have been amazing. So, one thing I did kind of like about the idea of the Klingons, or the Vulcans, they would fire first. It kind of reminded me, and I think it was unintentional, was the pilot of Enterprise, where the Vulcans were trying to tell Captain Archer, like, no, these are a culture of warriors. If you take back their warrior, you will dishonor him, right? You should just euthanize him right now. And they kind of understood how to deal with the Klingons, which I kind of appreciated. It's like, well, that's just how you deal with the galaxy. My one thing sort of with the scene, and it was because the message is a little bit muddled. I mean, I understand that, they're trying to do something a little bit different with Trek, and we're trying to not have necessarily this is like the clean line between what is right and what is wrong, because the Admiral is trying to say, we're not going to fire on them. And then there's everything about race versus culture. But at the same time, as a viewer, we are seeing the Klingons, and they are out for blood. So it's like, well, no, actually, you do kind of they are the bad guys. Like, there's nothing to be. Now, they view the Federation as the enemy simply because they have the idea of peace. But I feel like, again, we're seeing a lot of profound things, but I feel like there's no depth to the words that people are saying. We're seeing a lot of different perspectives here, which is very Trek, but I think we're actually losing, any sort of examination of okay, where is our true stance here? Because we have a couple of different perspectives, and my fear is that we eventually will not explore those. And maybe they're actually just setting us up for it for later episodes, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but as it stands right now, I feel like the message is a little muddled.
So I will disagree slightly, because I do believe the plan for the show is we will see the conflict from the Klingon side as well. I think that maybe it wasn't that well realized now, and we'll see where it goes. But the reason why I threw that little root beer reference in there is because there's an episode of Deep Space Nine where Quark is talking to, I don't know if it was O'Brien or Bashir or Dax.
I remember the scene.
Or Worf. Yeah, and he's talking about how the Federation...
They'll just take over. Like, everyone will just...
It's Garrick.
It's Garrick.
It's Garrick. It's him and Garrick talking.
Insidious.
Right?
Yes. Insidious, exactly. Yeah, and he's like, well, I'll be drinking root beer. Like, it's sweet, it's nice.
It's bubbly. When you drink enough of it, you start to like.
Yeah, that's right. But it's the homogenization. It's like we're all wearing the nice same jumpsuits and flying the sweet ships and everything's the same. And that's what the Klingons, that's what Takuma was saying, is that they're going to rob us of our individuality or rob us of our culture. I was listening to another one of the Star Trek podcasts that I listened to, and somebody on that show was saying how it's kind of like the conflict between the Native Americans and the Europeans when they came over. It's like, yeah, well, now they're nice and cool and everything, but they're going to take away what makes us us. And Takuma says basically as much. Maybe I think it's in the second episode and says it, but I think that is sort of the nature of the Make Kronos Great Again campaign here, is like these outsiders are going to make us into them, slowly over time. And that's what Insidious about. So we need to fight back. What I thought was really interesting is that Takuma, as the Klingon, is also preaching a very Star Trek ideal, which is unity. The Empire is divided. 24 houses are not together. And what we need to do is bring everybody together in order to further our ideals, which is very Star Trek. If you think about the Federation, as Star Trek explored the Federation through TNG, like in order to be eligible to enter the Federation, you had to have a one world government. So you had to have basically a uniculture on your planet. And everybody spoke on that planet. Everybody spoke basically the same language. Every alien culture had one.
We're all wearing the same jumpsuit. We all got the same
jumpsuit, same haircut, same language, same forehead ridges.
Everyone has two pairs of gravity boots.
Two pairs of gravity boots. Except for that Dax motherfucker, he wasn't wearing no gravity boots. Had holes in his feet. Jesus Christ, that guy. Who let that guy into a starship? Like, put some socks on, bro.
Dude, I walk around barefoot at work all the time. It's fun.
Hopefully you don't have bloodstained jumpsuits stuffed in a fucking air vent at your work.
Don't call me out.
What a shitty fucking hiding place that was, too.
No, bro. Don't call me out.
So you can kind of see, like, it is interesting because Star Trek has the unity message, which we're all on board with. But when you look at it from the Klingons' perspective, it's like, oh, shit, yeah, like there are things that, maybe not everybody else digs about me and who's as my individuality, my culture, as whatever culture you might be a part of, that I wouldn't necessarily want washed away. And I could see, if you're the Klingons, they're like, well, I don't want that washed away. Maybe I don't want bloodshed necessarily, but I would prefer bloodshed and war to, wearing that blue jumpsuit as a metaphor,
this is the
right?
thing. I mean, this is going to be interesting to see how the show progresses. As I said, right now it's a bit messy. So as I mentioned before, and as Nathan mentioned, I agree with you, Geoff. There's definite comparisons between, European settlements and Native Americans. I mean, making a commentary here. It's also a commentary related to, cultures in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world where they feel like they cannot express themselves. There's a danger of losing their culture. This is one of the brainwashing techniques of terrorist groups and how they bring other followers and believers to fight for them. And that's kind of the feeling, as I said, I got. So it's going to be interesting to see where the showrunners are going to take this show. Are they going to just paint them as a black and white villain or a complex villain? Or is Starfleet may end up being the villain? Or maybe both sides are the villain? Because really, in reality, both sides are the villain in the world, right? That we live in. All sides are the villain. And that's the problem with humanity. But the problem is this show is supposed to be, correct me if I'm wrong, the showrunners are saying it's going to be a return to that optimistic portrayal of humanity's potential. Right? Just with So it's going to be interesting to see if it's true or not. Because if it's true, I highly doubt they're going to go down that path that you're talking about. Klingons are probably just going to be black and white.
See, I think that we are going to go down the Klingon path, because I think in this context, I don't know if this is true. I hope this is true. Is that, but basically by the time we get to the original series, the Klingons and the Federation, they basically reached the Cold War era of their relationship, and Discovery will probably be the more open warfare portion before. I'm hopeful, because I heard one of the showrunners talk the other day about we're going to be seeing this conflict from the Klingon side as well, that it might not be the good guys and the bad guys. It's going to be, how do we find peace or the ceasefire, at least arrangement here that's going to happen? And the reason I think that is because clearly the conflict opens with a bit of a misunderstanding, like an accident happens and then conflict ensues. I know we have the zealots on the Klingon side, but perhaps that's not going. I hope that that's not going to be the case. I really do.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It's really hard to judge at this point.
Yeah, it really is. So anyway, after consulting with Sarek, and we get the version of the Klingon, the Vulcan hello term, she tries to convince the captain that we need to shoot first. She's like, no, we don't. Starfleet doesn't shoot first, and she gives her captain the old neck pinch, which I really liked. And I liked the scene that ensues after that, where she's hurrying. Like, I really got that sense of urgency. She's trying to get them to fire before anybody can kind of really figure out what's going on. She's like, oh, did the captain authorize this? Is like, well, we need to, she's calling Starfleet over, like, we need to do this. I like that scene. I thought it played really well and very, very urgent. And it really felt authentic to me. And obviously it doesn't work as the captain comes out, pointing the phaser, old school phaser, and the Klingon ships warp in. And I love that shot too, where you could see the two lines of battle with all of the Klingons on that one line and just the Federation ship on that other line. I thought that was a great shot in space. And that wraps up part one. So the final scene here, and maybe final thoughts on part one before we dive into the shorter part two. Nathan, why don't you send us off here?
Well, we do get some pretty good shots of, or some good looks of those Klingon vessels. The weird, sarcophagus ship has some neat, it's very different from, well, not very different, but it has some, neat allusions to previous Klingon ships. I thought it was neat. The other ships were, I don't know, we don't get good looks at them, so it's kind of hard to say. One thing, this is kind of where the show's losing a little bit, is we're ending the first episode on a mutiny, essentially. There's great acting here. I think there's great drama, and it works great as a sci-fi show. But as far as a Star Trek show, it's starting to lose me a little bit, even though I think the actors are doing really great in this scene, and it's a great, a well-produced scene overall. But yeah, I mean, those Klingon ships warp in, and, I'm compelled. I mean, I think I texted you right after. I'm like, I can't get the next episode. I can't do the podcast. Where is it? I need to see this next episode. I was kind of irritated. I couldn't watch it right away. I thought it ended on a great note, all my quibbles aside. I mean, we could probably really dissect this mutiny scene a lot more, but I mean, we'd be here forever. So I mean, I just want to say it feels very not Star Trek-ish. I mean, it's not the worst Star Trek scene ever, but that's all I kind of feel I want to say about it.
Okay, yeah, Harry?
I'll talk about the mutiny in the second part, but I loved it how it finished with the cliffhanger and all the ships warping in, and you see all the ships surrounding Shenzhou. I was hoping that somebody would say it's a trap. That would have been fucking awesome.
in the Admiral Akbar accent.
No. Georgiou says it in Chinese.
Jones gonna pull it off.
No.
Oh, that would be great.
She would have said it in Chinese, and we would get the subtitle.
That would have been pretty sweet.
In all seriousness, I loved it. I thought it was a great moment, both the mutiny and the cliffhanger. I thought it was great. It's interesting that it's not the Star Trek ideal, and they're showing the conflict here. And that's kind of the part that I'm kind of just very interested to see how they're really going to be treating this character, Burnham, because, she's supposed to hold all of her emotions together. She's supposed to be somewhat logical, as we're meant to believe. And then just the fact that her memory of what Sarek told her, or her vision, or whatever that may be. I mean, I don't even know what the fuck that was. He was communicating with her, or she was just having a vision? I mean, I don't even know what the fuck that was.
Yeah, I think he was, in the second part, that he is communicating with her. I thought it might have been a vision in the sense that, like, because they mind melded, like, he's always a piece of her and she's always a piece of him, so his Katra or whatever's in there. But I think he actually, I believe they kind of exposited
really
that out.
Seriously.
It probably is. Well, unless Sarek's a little freaky, and then, you know.
No, but giving her pointers.
He actually
logic dictates.
That'd be the weirdest thing. He's just standing like at the side of the bed, just kind of like with his like his blank look. It's like
I'm always with you.
No, but he does kind of make a comment because he like physically it takes a toll on him because he kind of has like a bit of a physical moment where he's like almost winces in pain a little bit as though he's like this is hard to maintain. Yeah, no. So I think it was in real time. It's not Ra's al Ghul visiting Batman in prison there at all, where it's just like a total vision. It's all happening in his mind.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm a fan of that, and I really hope they stop going forward. One, because I'm not a fan of the actor playing Sarek as it is anyways. I mean, it's the first episode or second episode, and I'm not a fan of what I've seen so far of his capabilities. But anyways, beyond that, the Mutiny, I liked it. Even though it's not following Trek's ideals, it was the first moment I was watching it in my room, and then I kind of, sat up straight and went, okay, shit's getting real. And it's like, so it's a little different. It's high tension. I like the way they built it up, and it was a great send off for the first episode. Well done.
Yeah, I just to wrap it up for the first part, I really liked it. I mean, it might not have been the smoothest transition to a mutiny, to kind of flip it, but I thought it was great, partly because it was so unexpected for Star Trek. And I mean, I've read some comments online, which isn't my normal practice because that's there lies madness when you read comments online, right? But I love that. I mean, people are saying that's not Star Trek and the mutiny, they never do the Starfleet officer and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, all right. But we've done that though. Like, we've done all of that.
Oh yeah,
and
in every show, I think in every series, eventually someone will mutiny.
That's right. It happens all the time. Remember that episode of TNG with O'Brien's old captain, and he takes his ship and starts blowing up Cardassians because he's emotional. All that stuff fucking happens, and it's so compelling, and it was great because it was unexpected. Like, you need to, at this point, we're the 6th televised series. We have 10 movies plus the 3 JJ movies. We're deep into Star Trek here. We need to start doing some stuff that's unexpected. Otherwise, we're all going to fall asleep. And I thought that this was great. And part of what made it work is what informed it. She was using Vulcan logic to make a decision that she knew was difficult and it was emotional, but that's kind of what makes it great. Like, they use the canon of, with Vulcan, like, that's great. Like, they use something that's already there with the Vulcans, which is such a huge part of Star Trek's DNA, huge part to give us this turn, and it fits so well. I mean, there was that, you guys remember that episode of DS9 where there was that assassin and she was Vulcan, but it was logical for her to try to assassinate the, I think it was an envoy from the Dominion or something. I can't remember exactly, but she used that sniper rifle that had the transporter bullets and shit.
Yeah, I remember.
It's so great.
They had multiple Vulcan, there were Vulcans in the Maquis even.
Right, exactly. So it's such a great way to make that work. And I thought that was so excellent about it, right?
I do want to, I don't necessarily disagree per se. My gripe though is that I feel in the pilot episode, there's something for me that doesn't feel earned necessarily. I kind of agree with you guys that there's something interesting about using Vulcan logic to make this type of turn. I'm not even against the idea of mutiny, but it kind of feels like you haven't really brought me there quite yet. Necessarily, even though we've had characters like Tuvok is a character that I really like from Voyager, and he starts off as a spy for the Federation in the Maquis. There are episodes where he's not necessarily mutinous, but he does things that go against Captain Janeway. But I've been brought into the character, and I can kind of buy it. And for me, it's this does not feel natural. It feels more like, okay, I understand that the writers have to move the story in a certain direction, and this is where we're going. And that's, to me, where it loses me slightly. Not so much that I'm okay, I'm out. I was compelled by it, but there's just this nagging thing with me where it's just like, it's not, maybe not quite earned. Maybe later in the series it will be earned. Maybe, it's kind of tough to say because, with the rest of Star Trek, it's like I've watched it all so many times that I can watch like a pilot and like read into motivations that I know are not there because it won't be for 4 seasons that they write something with the characters. So I'm kind of hoping, I'm just more judging it on just like, hey, this is the episode I've witnessed at this point.
Yeah.
So I just had to, because I know you guys are kind of like, I just have to kind of be the dissenting voice there just a little bit on the mutiny point.
That's never you, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, as I keep saying,
on your goddamn ass.
I'm still the guy who still recommended Superman 4 just to watch it, just even though everyone else hated it. I still watch it. That's me.
I have it ingrained in my memory. It lives with me.
Well, okay, so I think that wraps up part 1 of Vulcan Hello. I love that title. Part 2, A Battle at the Binary Stars. Also love that title. We open.
This was totally a riff. Not a riff, or an homage to, Battle of the Mutara Nebula. Right? Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. No, I think that almost everybody who works on Star Trek Discovery is a huge fan of Star Trek, like the original series TNG. So the Klingon ships have warped in. Takuma is trying to convince the other Klingons here. I think we get a little more clunkiness with the Klingon interactions here. I think it's done well enough. But it does remind me somewhat of season 3 of Star Trek Enterprise with the Nathan. What the fuck are those guys called in the Xindi?
Oh, the Xindi.
Where they had their bullshit council and they're just talking in vague expositional terms. And this smacks of that a little bit. It's much better done.
It's funny because I did think of that as well, but I thought this is the better version of that.
Yeah, it's a better version of that. And I can kind of understand it's hard to build the conflict with the Klingons if we're trying to show their point of view, but, we kind of have limited scenes because really we're more invested in the Starfleet characters. So, but this is where we get a little more insight into his motivation. Like, we don't want to be homogenized into the Federation. These guys are going to steal our individuality here. So we get a little bit more there. He's not just a crazy, want to blow up the universe kind of guy, like whatever the name of that Romulan dude was in Star Trek 09 and that kind of thing. Or, villains in that vein. There actually does seem to be legitimate motivation here. So that's good. The Starfleet reinforcements arrive. Burnham gets sent to the brig. And this is where basically the conflict starts here. So we get the first space battle. I've read some comments online saying that they didn't like the look of the space battle. I thought it was excellent.
No, I thought so. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
I think they could have used a few more close-ups of some ships getting hit or sending out some shots. There was a couple of, it seemed to be a lot of wide-angle shots of a bunch of different ships, which I just wish it was more of a mix. And then you were following the Shenzhou a little bit more on some tighter angles there. I think that's the only comment I would have. Aside from that,
that's
great.
Yeah, good point. I actually think so. Yeah. I thought it was excellent. I mean, I was watching it. I mean, there's some good space battle scenes in Deep Space Nine and the Dominion War stuff, but
this doesn't trump any of those though. All those big ones.
No,
but they can't.
Well, those were more.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's right. But production values were spectacular. Again, we have sort of the J.J. Kelvin timeline design with the weapons, where it's more like pulse lasers. I think they were called phase cannons. Did you not call them phase cannons and not phasers?
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Oh, Harry, did you catch that? Just a call back to Enterprise, which I thought was kind of neat.
No, I thought they were just phasers, but I might have missed it.
Okay.
There was a bit of a callback to Enterprise with the overall design of the Federation ships. Like, just the hulls were very NX 01 style, even though like the ships themselves were much more sophisticated, but I felt like the hulls themselves were very Enterprise-like. And they're all like much slimmer, the ships. Like, they don't have like the large, as far as like just height. Yeah. They're all like very the way.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. Like, I kind of wish there was a bit more variety between the ships that were there.
Well,
more traditional look, but so be it. Hopefully, we get some more variation.
No, granted, but I think that was maybe kind of the idea, was that like, okay, we're still kind of in that era. And I think the idea is that,
but we're only 10 years away.
Yeah, I know, and I think that they're going to kind of use that as a shorthand for, oh, we're in a new era, when I'm sure at the end of the series they're just going to debut, like, oh, here's the hull of our new class of ship or whatever, right? And our new Constitution class, and it's like you can stack 4 of our ships and then it makes the height of this. I think they're going to kind of do that, but I don't know. I did kind of like a bit of that callback to how the NX-01 was designed.
Okay, well, I guess that settles that. They were called phase cannons. I knew that. I was just giving the courtesy to you guys to agree with me, but so, yeah, it's true. Go back and watch it. So anyway, I mean, we basically the battle scenes here, and the Shenzhou is going to float into that asteroid there, which would be a real shame. And I was actually waiting for the Enterprise for some. Oh no, I was actually waiting for the Discovery.
Yeah, same. I thought that was going to be it too. Completely, it was telegraphing it completely to be that way.
Yeah, but that didn't happen, which is great. Again, like it kind of subverted what was going to be the obvious expectation in this second-rate USS Europa with Admiral Brett on it. Fuck, I love that guy, and I hate him at the same time. Such a good character.
How can you not love him? He's awesome.
He's such a cock. That's why I did love him, but I loved him because I hated him. Like that was such a great character. He was so good. He was such a douche. It's great. Like we haven't had. I mean, admirals in Star Trek are always cockbags, though, aren't they? Like always,
especially in TOS. In TOS, they were the worst. Yeah. When was the last time there was a good admiral? Even in TNG, who was the last good admiral? I love Brad Anderson. He's going to go down in the Starfleet Hall of Fame for douchebag admirals, but at least he got his comeuppance. That was a great scene, actually. Like I almost wish they called him commandant, because that's what they did in TOS a lot. Like there were a lot of commandants.
That's right. They should have done that. They should have done that.
Yeah, because that's never been seen since then. I agree. That would have been great.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, but that was kind of neat. So he gets a ceasefire going. Okay, everything's fine, and then he just rammed that ship. I loved that effect with the cloaked ship.
Yeah, that was great.
Fuck, that was cool. Yeah,
great scene. That was amazing, and I'm glad they didn't make it overly spectacular. It felt realistic, like it was a slow burn. That ship was just crumpling. It was great.
Yeah. It felt like it had a real weight to it, which is hard with CG to portray that. So that was cool. So we kind of go back to the brig there with Commander Burnham, and she's just basically boxed in. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Well, there's some great shots there too. When the guy flew away in space, he goes, "This ain't right. We shouldn't be fighting." And then again, Starfleet's morals. He gets blown away. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen. And then you see some wide angle other shots of her just with the force field, and the hull is broken. And I love that. And that's a nice little callback, because even then, when you go back to the bridge, and Saru is listing off the sections that are blown away because the hull was compromised. And I thought that was a nice little homage again to Generations, where Kirk was taken away to the Nexus.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I thought, and you see the hulls broken up, and I was just waiting for Scotty to go, So I thought it was some really good scenes here. That was great, and I like how she got out. She was doing the logic, fighting the computer over logic. I thought that was pretty nifty for her to get out of there.
The Kirk level word jujitsu to kind of get out of the.
Yeah, that was great. I like that as well.
I immediately thought of Kirk like talking a computer like into like a weird logic bomb.
Oh yeah, I looked it up.
That was the first thing I thought. I was like, oh, it's Kirk word jujitsu with a computer. It was great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He I looked it up. He did it, I believe, on four occasions, not including V'ger, because it didn't really work with V'ger. Yeah. So he talked 4 synthetic intelligences to destroy themselves in the original series there, which is pretty impressive because it's only 3 seasons long. So I thought it was kind of neat. It is. I mean, I know those writers know Star Trek well enough to know that that's a callback to the original series and a bit of a deep cut going back. So I respect something like that because it shows the love for the series. Even if it's a little bit cheesy, I can go with it because it's consistent with Star Trek. So so Burnham, and that poor bastard getting blown out into space there. I mean, I like that as well, Harry, as you referenced. He's obviously he has a concussion. He's freaked out. Like, why are we fighting? I like that. Like, we're not soldiers. Like, we're Starfleet officers. We're explorers. Like, that was great. I love that. And that poor fucker getting blown into space is sad. I mean, we don't really get a chance to get invested in that guy. I don't know if we even learned his name.
But this is great for the audience because where have you seen this in another pilot? Because you're thinking these are going to be the people that you are going to get to know. That's your expectation. And then bam, this person's gone. Bam, that person's gone. Bam, this person's gone. I think it's great.
Yeah. And traditionally, and that's what I was saying before, like traditionally, like just you meet your bridge crew. Like sure, we're not getting any names in this show. And then he's confused. He goes down there and boom, he's dead. And that, I actually kind of felt that was maybe not like shocking, might be a bit too strong of a word. It was like, oh, whoa. Cause I kind of thought, well, he was already on the bridge. We haven't been introduced to him yet, but we will eventually. It's like, oh, he'll make his way to med bay and like, whoosh, gone like that.
You should have just said winter is coming. Then he'd be gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Winter is here, motherfuckers.
And again, like that's actually what makes this like a fresher Star Trek, because you don't get a lot of death in Star Trek, especially in the pilots. I mean, I think Voyager did it a little bit, but I think they killed like a character that you never actually saw, and then like oh, now the hologram's the Doctor.
And then, and her first officer died in Voyager, but he had like a half a line.
I don't even remember who she did. Really?
She had remember because Chakotay was their first officer. She had one. He died in the pilot. Like
I have no memory of who the hell that even was.
Yeah, well, that's because it was Voyager and then a shit job with character development. So. Fuck Voyager. Anyway, so as we get the plan here, and I was mixed on this. I kind of like that they kind of cooked up one plan. Like we're gonna fly we're trying to figure out a way to get the photon torpedo onto the Klingon flagship to blow everything up. It's like, okay, well, we could beam it over, the sensors would pick it up, and we'll do this. And it's like, I'll fly it over. And then Burnham comes over. She's like, no, I'll fly it over. And then they see the bodies getting sucked up. Like, oh, well, we'll beam it onto one of the bodies there.
Here's an interesting thing. So before sorry to interrupt, Geoff. So I read another article on the internet where this is another interesting facet to Starfleet, because and what the showrunners are trying to show here is technically we have in our real world, we have the Geneva Convention, right? So, and with respect to dealing with dead people.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, they're planting a bomb on a dead body that's being transported back. So even though it's the enemy, but these morals should be, inherited by Starfleet, you would think, right? So here they're violating that right of the Klingon retrieving, their honored soldier, and they're attaching a bomb to him, and then they blow the shit out of him. I would have done the same thing, because who the fuck are these Klingons? We came in peace. You don't like that? Fuck you. I would do that. Shatner would do that. I'm all for that. But it's what are the showrunners trying to say here? If anything, maybe they're not saying.
Well, it's basically a war crime.
Yeah, it's a war
what's
crime.
going on here.
Yeah, right. And that's really interesting. I never thought of that. And you're absolutely correct. Yeah, that's kind of unsettling.
I mean, it is clever. Like, it's a clever writing tool, I guess. Is like, oh, we're going to sort of surreptitiously like attack them through like some action that the enemy is doing. But this is kind of a dark thing for Starfleet to do.
Mm-hmm. And that being said, like they're probably not in many situations where they need to worry about things like international treaties and rules of war, because they're not soldiers. So it's like they're in a situation where like we could die, right? Like it's not like we can retreat easily. Like they could kill us. Like we're just trying to survive. What's something we can do in order to save ourselves? So but that's a really good point, Harry.
It really wasn't an act of preservation in that sense, because I don't think they were in any immediate danger, and it looked like Takuma was about to take off. Unless this was just
and
the rest of the fleet took off, the Klingon fleet. So, and he said, "I'm allowing you to survive." Right? Didn't Takuma say this?
He does say that. I don't know if it was before this scene or after the scene where he says. Oh, it was before, because he's the one who says it, and he dies, right? So, you'll serve as heralds to this thing, and they basically make a move or she's thinking to make a move to assassinate this motherfucker, right? With the photon torpedo on the dead body, like that's an assassination attempt, not a battle attempt to destroy him. So that's interesting that I think of that. So that's interesting. But Burnham's plan there, so she's like, no, that's just going to make him a martyr. So we capture him. That'll mean dishonor, and that'll give us leverage. So I thought that was cool. So they go over there. la Spock Kirk in Star Trek 09 again with their
this was a
phasers
scene
set
stripped right out of that movie.
Yeah, ripped right out of that, absolutely. But I liked how it played. Like, they get over there, they shoot some Klingons, they get into some Mortal Kombat. Burnham gouges that Vox eye out. That guy looks like he's going to be a bad motherfucker coming up here, so that'll be fun, hopefully.
He looks like a turd. Not because he's albino, but he just looks like, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of this Vox guy.
So, what are you saying? You don't like white people?
Who gave it away? No, but you know what I mean. I don't know. I have to see. Yeah, I have to see where he's going to go. But I wasn't impressed with him as a character.
Well, I wonder if
it's too early,
because he seems like he's not going to be that reasonable. But I wonder if that other Klingon, the female Klingon that had a couple of lines, that was part of T'Kuvma's sort of entourage there, if she might end up being the more like the reasonable Klingon that helps bring an end to the conflict. And because Bok doesn't look like he's going to come around. Like he looks like he's more of a zealot than T'Kuvma is, right? Captain Georgiou gets into a fight, and she holds her own against the Klingon, but obviously he's going to prevail. Just stabs her right through the heart, and Burnham's like, "Fuck this!" Switches her phaser to kill, and opens up a hole in that Klingon's chest. And shit, I love that because I like it when characters make. Like it's frustrating when you watch a show or a movie and a character makes a stupid decision and there's no reason, but she makes a bad decision because of because of emotion, and I bought it because of that. Like, no, like I got to get this guy, I got to put this guy down. It was the wrong thing, and she knew it was the wrong thing, but she did it in the heat of the moment. So I really like that, to see a Starfleet officer trying to do the right thing but doing the wrong thing.
So Geoff, can I ask you a question? Yes. So I've only seen it the one time as we're recording a few nights after the premiere. Did she change any setting on her phaser, or I thought she just shot right away and that's the end of it?
It's kind of like it was, if you remember in Star Trek 9, like they flipped the switch and the phaser would turn from blue to red. So there's a little indicator on the back of the phaser. When they beamed over, it's blue. It's very subtle. It's the blue circle. And when you could see her flick it, and it turned to red, and she shot it. And that killed him. It was on stun before.
Oh, so we go back. Okay. So she consciously made that. I didn't pick that up at all.
Yeah. And I like that bit. So, because like when you watch Star Trek 09, there's actually a physical thing on the phaser that it flips around from stun to kill, so you can kind of see it. It was more visual representation of it. And this was just sort of the light on the back of it, but you can see it. Because I'm a Star Trek geek, right? When they go over and they're shooting them, I'm like, are they on stun or kill? And I can see the blue light on the back. I'm like, blue probably means stun. And then it was red when she shot. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's kill. So
I thought it was a much better way than the way they did it in Star Trek 9.
Yeah,
it's a little bit more subtle, but you kind of, they probably wouldn't have been able to do that effect without us seeing the Abrams version of it. But you're right. I kind of appreciated that a little. It's like a little bit of a nod, but it's not like it's not like so in your face, or like half the gun like flips over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was almost too. I can understand in Star Trek 09 why they did it that way, because I don't know, maybe it was too geeky to say, well, set phasers to stun, set phasers to kill. Like that's in the lexicon. Even non-Star Trek fans get it. So that was just an easy way to represent that in Star Trek 09. And maybe this was even too subtle for it, because ultimate Star Trek nerd Harry didn't see it, but
completely missed it.
Yeah. But this was so she kills him. Captain Georgiou is dead, and I like that scene where she runs to try to retrieve the body, and what's his nuts there, Saru beams her back. It's a bit of a failure of Star Trek tech magic. Like, they just beamed an inanimate object into space, the photon torpedo. But they can't beam a body. Yeah, like it's so lost her life signs.
That's a trope.
What does that mean?
That's just
But but I understand it, because it's like you kind of getting the emotional message. Like the Klingons are retrieving their dead bodies. She wants to retrieve their dead, and she can't. So that hurts her. They obviously had such a close relationship. So I'm all right with it. So both forces withdraw, and then we cut back to Commander Burnham's court-martial, where she's been charged with treason or mutiny or whatever, all of the shit. She pleads guilty, and they're like, you are no longer a Starfleet officer, and you are in prison for life. Done. What a way to start a Star Trek show. Shit. So that was the finale. Just the last scenes there. Harry.
Aside from it completely being taken from 09, the set piece, I enjoyed the action there. The shootouts. I kind of wish that the hand-to-hand combat was a bit more interesting. And I'm not saying Michelle Yeoh's got to start, busting out some martial arts, but I was just hoping that there would be something, a bit more stretched out. And Takumba didn't seem very strong, or it's not that he has to overpower anybody, but just Klingons have their way of really moving in a fight. And this guy just looked like he was just, I'm just hacking down. It was just, it wasn't very interesting. It wasn't very fast. It wasn't very energetic. So I kind of wish that there was a bit more there, but that's okay. It's just one episode. It still probably beats any of the hand-to-hand fighting we saw in TNG. Do you remember the time where it's like the card just like throws the pistol into the other arm and then he punches the Ferengi out? It's like, so we're going from that to this. It's a major improvement, right?
That Ferengi was a chump, though. I believe that.
He was wrong. It was wrong.
Yeah, it was wrong. Yeah, he popped in the face. That was great.
I really hope we get some Ferengi in this show.
Oh, man.
No, I liked it. I mean, yeah, I didn't care about the body retrieval thing. Yeah, as I mentioned, I didn't catch the switch to the kill there, so that's a nice little interesting nugget to think about. Yeah, shocking to see Michelle Yeoh go, but not too shocking, because we already knew that Jason Isaacs was coming in. He'll be the captain, which I guess we'll talk about shortly, because I have a couple comments there, which I'll save for the end. The court-martial, yeah, it's a really interesting way to end the first pilot, so this is kind of like our prequel or to the show, and Discovery really kicks off in episode 3. So I think this is really, really interesting way to start the series, and very ballsy, very cutting edge and fresh for Trek, and I think it's a great start to the first couple episodes. I did find it interesting that the tribunal, who was at the court martial, their faces were all hidden in the light, so I thought that was really a neat way of lighting that set. Kind of wished it kind of reminded me of in a different way of Superman, The Trial of Zod. So it was like, I was hoping it would be funny if it was like, oh, guilty. But no, I like.
And then Burnham's banished into and then she's banished into the Phantom Zone.
But yeah, overall, great ending. Loved it.
Yeah. Nathan, what are your thoughts there on the end?
Well, I think overall, I thought just the emotional impact for Burnham losing not just her captain, but, like a mentor and almost like a mother figure. I thought that was really heartfelt. I will say, though, that there was something weird about the editing and the choreography of the actual physical fight that Michelle Yeoh had with, what's the Klingon's name? Takuma. And it's like, Michelle Yeoh can do better than that. So I mean, there was something like, it was just like, I don't want to say half-assed, but there was something there that felt strange. I felt like the editing was weird because I couldn't really tell what was going on. Then it would cut to Burnham, and it was just almost like as though they were just kind of like held each other's shoulders, kind of pushed each other around. I found it actually rather shocking that she was killed. Because it was always unclear as to what her role was going to be going forward with the show. And a pretty inglorious end to what would otherwise actually be like probably a very revered character in the universe if you kind of, if you had a whole other show with her, and just to be boom, just dead, and you leave the body behind like that.
I'm sure you'll be able to read the 50 novels that'll come out.
Yeah, that's
I think it's IDW that has the comic book rights. So I'm sure we're going to see like a whole series of, when she was an ensign and she was at Starfleet. But also, I also found I was rather surprised that they killed off, what's the Klingon's name again? Takuma, yeah. Because that was exactly what they were not trying to do. And the fact that, and Geoff, you're right, like the fact that Burnham killed him sort of in this moment of passion in a way was, I thought, pretty interesting way to start the series, because that was kind of the whole point, was to not kill him. And the fact they go, it's like, damn, So an interesting way to, shall we say, end start the series, maybe, I'm very intrigued and I'm very compelled by this Burnham character. And that's really what I want to to see going forward, because there's a lot of contradictions in this character, but they feel like natural contradictions, not like, oh, it's just like the writing is bad and she does one thing and does the other. I think there's a lot of conflicts in this character that I think have really come out, and I kind of hope we explore this a little bit more.
Yeah, I hope we explore that more, and I think we must. And the reason why I think we must is because there's no reason to start the show in this manner.
Unless you will.
Unless you will. Yeah, otherwise it'd be like, whatever, we'll start at episode 3 and we'll have 13 episodes, and the reason for that. And I expected Captain Georgiou to die because, I knew that Michelle Yeoh was just a guest star. I think I'd heard that. No, we didn't know she died, but she wasn't captain of the Discovery.
It's not just that. So, I think they did themselves a big disservice. She should have been in the title sequence at the beginning. She should have been the first character, like the star.
Yeah.
And then that would have been a little bit of shock, because once you say, special appearance by Michelle Yeoh, you automatically...
You're right, exactly.
So they could have, Sonika Martin Green, have the title cards change.
But they would have needed to, but then we need to go back, because we knew all the way back that the main character was going to be not the captain, was going to be the first or second officer of the ship. That was how it was always going to be. That was how it was always set up. So we knew that, and we knew that. I don't know. I mean, it's a shame because she was so good.
Yeah, she was really good.
She was so good, and it's like, God damn it, she's dead. And I wanted to see the show with her. She's so good, but on the other side, that's what makes it so good that they killed her. Is now I'm in a lurch right now. I knew she was going to bite it.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Qui-Gon was one of the best aspects of the prequel trilogy. He died off. What were we left with?
Well, yeah. Well, I'll take Jason Isaacs over Hayden Christensen any fucking day of the week. Thank you very much.
I think we'll still get. I think that they actually might do the occasional flashback to her, though.
And that's what I think as well, just from a couple of other things that I've heard, not spoilers, but I'm not going to say anything. But anyway, what's great is as soon as, I'm left in the lurch. Right now, I got to see the next goddamn episode. And part of that is because she died. I'm like, shit, she was so good. Mad. But I have such an emotional response. And I don't know that I've ever had this emotional response to a pilot, to a Star Trek pilot. Every Star Trek pilot from all the other series, very similar. Except for TNG, or not TNG, the original series, because things were different back then. But we get our standard introduction to every single character who's a bridge officer, and they all get their sort of little mini arc in the pilot, and you get their exposition of the backstory, and usually it really sucks. It's boring, and it's we'll give them time because they got to develop the characters, and usually they do. And in this case, it opens with a bang, and we get a character who's goddamn awesome, and sorry, she's now dead. And I'm like, Jesus. And I got that emotional response that I never had before in a pilot, and I love it, and it's driving me crazy at the same time. And that's also why I love it. It's great. So that's the end of the show. So let's talk about a couple of the overarching items here before we wrap up. So I don't really know a subtle way to bring it up, but I've been reading comments online. Did this feel like Star Trek to you guys? Harry?
Star Trek has to change, though. Does it not?
Yeah, goddamn right it does.
The good thing here is it felt like both. It felt like something that was, you mentioned, you got that feeling of JJ Trek, but I also felt, especially in the first episode, where I felt I was talking about those allegories to, terrorism, to military confrontation, to shades of gray between right and wrong, to that quick judgment of conflict. I liked where some of these themes were coming from, and I'm looking forward to that exploration in addition to what we're going to get with further exploration of the characters that we're going to get to know. And to me, that's Star Trek. I like that. So yes, I think this is Star Trek. It's just going to be different. You can't do TNG anymore. Honestly, the show is going to be more like DS9. A modernized version of DS9 is my gut feel of where this show is going to go, which is interesting because I thought they were saying they're going to try and return back to its optimistic view of Trek, in a sense. I'm not sure if they said that or if I'm just thinking this is what the Orville is going to be. I can't recall where I'm hearing that from. So it's going to be interesting to see where this is really going to traject, and I'm really looking forward to it. I think it is Trek, but it's different Trek, and that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. Otherwise, it will not last.
Yeah.
Because I have a feeling the Orville will not last.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with that. Nathan, what do you think?
Well, just speaking about the Orville, I mean, I only watched like half the pilot with the sound off, and I'm surprised it's even getting past that, to be perfectly honest. But is this Trek? Yeah, I still feel like it's Star Trek in many ways. You know, I mean, I love Deep Space Nine, and it's a huge deviation from what Trek purists would say. You know, everybody gets along, and you know, in a lot of hope. But I think that DS9, it's still kind of cracked the code. This, I'm a little bit mixed on it, because I think that there are many elements that are very strong that I don't even think that Enterprise was able to get right. But then it kind of fell into some other areas that I kind of feel are a little bit more Abrams-esque. But like overall, I'm like, it still kind of feels like Star Trek, but there's like some elements missing that I wish that they had added, perhaps. And it's a little nebulous. But
I have to give it time, though, right?
No, I agree. And it does. Oh, absolutely. And it's not like, well, I don't know, it's kind of okay or blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm still very compelled overall by the whole show, and I'm very excited to see where it goes. Because, you know, like, certainly when DS9 came on, I mean, didn't have a lot of options for TV. And, you know, and I probably at the time, it kind of gave it, it's like, probably wasn't too hot on. It's like, oh, it's kind of whatever. But, I mean, I grew to truly love Deep Space Nine. I mean, and there's many arguments to be made that's better than TNG. We don't have to get into that here, but, I mean, I think sometimes with certain shows, like, you can kind of watch the pilot and it's like, I don't know, I could go other way. And then once the show progresses, you can kind of look back on, it's like, oh, okay, now I really see what they're doing. And I have a couple of shows that are kind of like that, where like, I don't really like the first few episodes, but when I first watch them, but after seeing like the whole series or even just the first season, like, oh yeah, I totally buy into it. So, I mean, I think that absolutely Trek needs to change. If all of you die, right? And I think we live in a different television era now. And so if Trek is not going to do some new things and take some risks, like, then don't even do it then.
Yeah, this was
right. If they're just
this was ballsy. I loved it.
Oh, it's a huge risk, and I'm glad they took that risk, because I think if they had done like a complete ripoff, I mean, if they had done a complete ripoff, like even just TNG or something like that, or Voyager maybe, I would have been so disappointed. Or even like Enterprise. And Enterprise again was trying to move around the formula only so much and still be very Star Trek. And when I go back and watch that pilot now, it doesn't really work for me. But this, like, yeah, worked for me, even on a basic level. It's very enjoyable. You know, for any other quibbles you might want to talk about, like what is it, Star Trek or whatever, it absolutely works as a pilot and a show.
Yeah, just for my 2 cents, I think that I agree with Nathan there. It works very well as a pilot and as a TV show. I mean, it's so cinematic. Does it feel like Star Trek? For me, I mean, absolutely feels like Star Trek. I mean, tell me anybody who says this doesn't feel like Star Trek didn't watch a single second of Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine is Star Trek. Yeah, there were more shades of gray. It probably was not what Gene Roddenberry originally envisioned, but Deep Space Nine was still about the hope of humanity, the hope that we can be better than we were yesterday, that we strive to be better than we are today, and to recognize that we're not perfect, but we can move forward. Like, Deep Space Nine killed that. I mean, TNG in the original series, like, we're all already perfect, and that's great. And that was fine. Like, that worked great for those shows. And then Deep Space Nine and Voyager, to an extent, decided to explore, well, what happens when we're not perfect, but we want to be. And this does feel more of an extension, a modernization of Deep Space Nine, where, like, it's not black and white. Like, just because we need to shoot first doesn't mean we're the bad guys necessarily. Maybe it's just what needs to be done, but it does. It needs to grow. It needs to evolve. And I'm glad that they did it. Like, Harry, you said it a few times. It was ballsy. And Star Trek needs to be ballsy now if it's going to survive and succeed. And I'm glad they did it. I don't know where it's going to go from here. I thought it was a really interesting choice to basically give us a 2-hour prequel to what's going to be a Star Trek series. Shit. So, great. I mean, good on them. So, another...
Sorry, yeah, I just want to mention one thing too, because obviously we can't judge too early, and it takes, as I said, it takes time. Every show, not just Star Trek, will take a season or two to really find its footing. And we can all remember what episode 3 of TNG was, Code of Honor, that shitty Tasha Yar one, right?
Code of Honor,
right?
Oh baby,
that's what it's called. So I just thought I'd remind everybody here that it does take time, even if people who are listening to this and say, no, I didn't see anything of Star Trek in there. Well, you know what? You might if you stick with it. And there was stuff even in this one that were representative of classic Star Trek. They were exploring some themes and they took some risks, and that's what Star Trek is all about.
Yeah, yes. So let's everybody, like any fans out there, let's just chill the fuck out and give it a shot. I mean, I was surprised. I read a lot of comments on. Again, I don't usually read comments online because I don't want to, jump through a window in a fit of rage. But I read someone's like, "This isn't Star Trek. I'm not watching." Like in all caps. I'm like, this is a person who didn't live through this Star Trek. Like, you didn't sit there. Like, you're telling me you sat there in 1987 and watched the Encounter at Farpoint and was like, "Fuck this, out." No, you sat through it. You're like, all right. And then you watched 24 episodes of season 1, including Code of Honor, and a lot of other turds that were squeezed out during that first season, and season 2. And you're going to tell me that you watched 90 minutes of this, like, it's not Star Trek, when clearly they're much more evolved. Like, come on. Like,
it's all nonsense. Because, I've seen plenty of articles from when TNG, even before it premiered, that, like, people hate it. It's like, it's not the original series. People, like, fans were pissed that they were having the original series involved in like a new TV show. Who are these guys? This bald guy. We got a black guy up in there. That's crazy. I mean, it's like
two black guys.
Two black guys. Yeah. I mean, it's insane. You're always going to have that sort of nonsense happen with any series. Those are garbage people that kind of talk about it. I mean, this is
That's just the internet. That's just fandom. People are just, it's not that people are stupid. It's the fact that they're just passionate, right? They want to see something because
but it's also, not just the.
No, true.
That's what I was trying to point out.
No, but people also really they want Star Trek to be back. And obviously they're saying it needs to be familiar because they really miss it. Thank you, Mr. JJ, for really, fucking things up. But that's part of the problem, is they really want something of quality back. So they're scared of something different, right? Because that's where we went down with New Trek. So that's where the fear lies. And just as you said, guys, like after a few episodes, everyone had problems with TNG, and then they came around and said it's a great show. So hopefully this will be the same case. If it continues as a high quality product.
So I do have a quick question for you guys, and because this kind of goes to like, what will this show be? Harry Mudd is confirmed as a character for this series, and it's such a bizarre character from TOS. Like, what does that kind of say about what this series is going to be if you're going to introduce this type of a character reintroduce this type of character?
They'll probably reinvent him, is my guess. It's probably not going to be what we saw in TOS.
Yeah, I'm a little confused at the choice. I like Rainn Wilson as an actor who's going to be playing Harry Mudd.
He's going to be
it is
Galactic Joker. That's kind of my guess.
Yeah.
Like, is it going to be like? Is he going to be the Heath Ledger to Cesar Romero? You think that's what's going to happen?
Yeah, I have a feeling that's what's going to happen.
Because I was kind of wondering about, like, what are the Star Trek tropes that are they going to bring back? Now, Jonathan Frakes is going to be directing. I think he has directed an episode, and he sort of accidentally dropped that they're going to the Mirror Universe.
Yeah, I remember. I heard that spoiler today. I was like, Christ.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Frakes.
Yeah. So again,
that's awesome. That they're going to do it.
Yeah. Well, totally. But I mean, like, are they going? Because I never liked the way DS9 did it. So, like, what do you think we're going to get with this series? Because again, it's very iconic, but it's also a very tough thing to do.
You didn't like
it's a good.
I loved it.
There are aspects of it that I liked, but I think it was actually the second episode where they did it that I didn't like it that much. It was the first episode I liked.
I think for the DS9 multiple episodes that they did in the Mirror Universe, I was disappointed, but I think they actually did it right, because I think I read a novel when I was in junior high school, a Star Trek novel where it was TNG in the Mirror Universe.
Yeah.
And, like it was on the Enterprise D, Captain Picard, and it was the mirror, the dark version of the Enterprise D, and it was really cool. I mean, obviously not canon.
They just put out a comic book of like the Mirror Universe TNG, and like, it's amazing the way like Picard's got, like, he's got like no sleeves on, he's like really buff and stuff like that.
That's awesome. I wonder if it's based on that novel. I actually had the audiobook of that novel, which was read by John Delancey, so it was really rad because he does an awesome Patrick Stewart. But anyway,
I was thinking of some of the other tropes. Like, what about time travel? Do you think we'll get into that?
Well, here's the thing: is as I was going to say, I mean, it's hard. It's really hard to say because obviously we're going to be telling this story of the Klingon conflict, and I was wondering if we were going to get some time travel, alternate universe stuff. Remember in the episode in this pilot when they were trying to scan the Klingon beacon, and they couldn't get a reading on it. It was just fuzzy on the screen. There was some interference, and I was just like, what's going on here? I just got kind of a strange vibe, like a time travel alternate universe vibe from that. So I'm wondering if something like that's going to play into it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it because
I think that had more to do with the visuals. So I felt like that way too. Yeah, I think it was more like the way they visually represented it. Like it actually almost looked like a hole at times. There was like a whole space-time continuum. But I truly think it was just really more just a sensor disruption is what it was.
But what was the explanation for that though? Because the surrounding visuals, nothing else was disrupted on that screen though.
No, but they could physically look at it though, right? Remember they at the telescope? Well, just because
I guess that's
I think it had more to do with when they see it on the screen, it's actually the ship scans it and interprets it as like a visual medium that they can. That was the way I saw it.
That's fair. I'm excited to see where we go. I mean, it is kind of funny that, we're past pilot and we really don't have a goddamn clue what's going to happen. We have no idea what's going on.
Well, can I mention something? Did you guys see that?
No, shut up.
Okay. But did you guys see that?
No, go ahead.
Trailer for the preview of the rest of the season or upcoming episodes?
Oh, I did not. No.
Okay, so I won't say much, but I think the most interesting aspect will be is who is Jason Isaacs really going to play? Like, obviously he'll be playing this captain, but it seems like he could be a Jericho type, like Captain Jericho or you remember
Jellicoe.
Or Jellicoe, that's it. He could be a Jellicoe type, like kind of like a war mad, crazy guy bent on destruction and chaos and violence at all costs kind of thing. And I think that could be a very interesting dynamic moving forward.
See, and that's interesting because we've already established Michael Burnham as being all right with being a mutineer.
So that's where maybe the show is going to reside. That's where they're going to rest its laurels and explore, Burnham's kind of, maybe she started off this way and then she'll revert back to a little bit more of a person who respects the, mortal core of Starfleet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Or even perhaps Isaac is actually playing Jellicoe from the future. Anyways, no, actually, I have kind of read that though, Harry. And that I'm kind of excited about this aspect of we don't know much about this character and might be mysterious. Again, a deviation from Trek, which I want to see how well it fits into the Trek world.
Yeah, so I think that'll be very interesting moving forward. So we're going to get a lot of exploration on these kind of concepts, and I'm really looking forward to it. Very exciting.
Yeah, let's start to wind it in. One thing I did want to ask you guys. So we now have 6. Maybe 7, depending on how you want to look at it, pilots of Star Trek series. Where does this rank of pilots for Star Trek? Nathan, why don't you, off the top of your head, rank the pilots for us and where this fits in?
Oh boy, it's totally unfair without any forewarning here.
Well, you should already have ranking in your head if you're a true Trek fan.
Yeah, I should have already had the spreadsheet out and already ranked every single episode. I would say, I would actually. As of right now, and this may change in the future, this is actually kind of my favorite Star Trek pilot. I think part of this has to do with the fact that it's a little more modern. And then after that, I would rank TNG, and then DS9, TOS, and then Voyager Enterprise.
What are we counting as the actual pilot for TOS? Now, is it?
I was going to say where No Man Has Gone Before.
That's Kirk versus his friend, right?
Gary Mitchell. Yeah.
Okay.
That's the episode I'm kind of rating as the pilot.
Is it my turn?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll go worst to best. So the worst would be Enterprise. Then I'd probably say TNG, Encounter at Farpoint, as second worst. Moving up the ladder, I'll probably say Voyager. Then Where No Man Has Gone Before TOS. Then DS9. And then this one is the best. Cream of the crop for the pilots for Star Trek.
Interesting. For me, going worst to best, I'm going to say Caretaker, Voyager as the worst. Then Broken Bow, Enterprise, Counter Farpoint, TNG there. And then I'm going to say Where No Man Has Gone Before. And then DS9. I don't remember what the episode was. And then this one I think ranks Emissary, yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, and then this one I think ranks at the top. I wasn't sure it was going to rank that high for all of us, but yeah, I think it's a solid start. So, any final thoughts or other questions, discussion points you guys want to bring up, Harry? Anything else in the toolkit you want to bring up here?
No, I'm just really excited that it's back. I hope that Discovery so far it looks like it's treated it with respect, but again, I have a real bone to pick with marketing on CBS. Not only did they fuck up the celebration of the 50th anniversary of Trek, but I really don't think they marketed this very well. I mean, forget all the bullshit with the CBS All Access stuff. But if that means getting it on that streaming service means to this level of budget and quality, then I'm all for it. But they're not marketing it well. And I have a big problem with that. And they're losing a lot of chance to get people into the show. I thought I was in for a shit show for this. And this was a great pilot. And it's crazy that they didn't market it that way.
Star Trek is a difficult property to market well because the fandom is so touchy. Like, as we talked about, right? Like, they're really, really particular. And it's like every single fan has such particular needs and wants for what the exact images they want to see for a Star Trek TV show. And if they don't get that, they're often disappointed. And now with social media, and the internet, it spreads like wildfire when something negative happens. And like these lots of guys like, I'm not trying to disparage anybody who might be listening who is a Star Trek fan. I mean, we're doing this because, we love it. We love the show. We love Star Trek. Like, obviously, we're not trying to take a dump on anybody who also loves it. But it's if you're a Star Trek fan, you need to look in the mirror and know you are a particular guy or girl. And that I can understand makes the studio nervous. Like, how do we market to this group of people who are so particular while also trying to grow it? Like, we want it to grow.
Star Wars.
But you can say it. You can say it about Star Wars. Well, here's the thing. I don't think I'm not trying to say it's an excuse, but I understand that it's difficult because you also want to grow it, right? Like, and us as the fans, we want it to grow. We want it to be big, want it to be exciting. And I don't think it's easy. So I guess that wraps it up for Star Trek Discovery, gentlemen. I don't know that we want to necessarily, I mean, obviously, I think we all have good reviews, so we can recommend it. I know we usually give Rare Antiquity ratings. I don't know that that's necessarily applicable here, Harry.
I think we're all on the same page here. This is probably the best pilot out of all of them. So, in my opinion, considering what was at stake here for Star Trek, I think this is a rare antiquity. And I think we can agree on that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Rare antiquity. Yeah, stamped, sealed, and approved.
I agree. And you view it with all the other pilots. I mean, it's rare to get a Star Trek pilot and it's actually like kind of quite a bit better than any other. It's not like, well, it's kind of better than the other ones. It's like it's quite a bit better than the other Star Trek pilots.
Yeah, we're going to do sort of a mid-season recap about halfway through the season, just to recap what we've seen so far, and then we'll do a wrap-up at the end of season 1 to kind of go over the second half and obviously overall what we're going to do. So that's our plan. So stay tuned for that. We'll probably do the mid-season wrap-up. I think the show is going to be on the mid-season hiatus around November, and then we'll pick up in January to finish in, I guess, March, and we'll do the wrap-up then. So should be a lot of fun.
No, looking forward to it.
Right on. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it, gentlemen. So for next time on Podcast of Rare Antiquities, we are going to be getting back to our regular reviews for films. So we're going to be going back to the film noir age, and we are going to take a look at the film Double Indemnity.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I never heard of it.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. No, it's same director as Sunset Boulevard, which we did a number of episodes ago. So
great.
Should be a good one.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be good. All right. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. This was a lot of fun. Glad we got to dig into a specific Star Trek episode, and I definitely look forward to the next one.
As do I.
All right. Thanks for thanks, Steve. But Nathan, that was great.
I didn't know what to say there.
No, it's late.
Yeah. See you on Grovetta Island. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun, boys.
It was fun. Thanks for coming, guys. Okay,
Soon.
I'll talk to you later.